trans rights.
All right. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome in YouTube. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Hi. Welcome in. Hi, Kit. Thank you guys for being over there on the YouTubes. What's up, Pendulous Dragon? Welcome in. Oh, Modbong. Hi, Modbong. Let's go. All right. Back into it, okay? So much to get through. So yeah. Today is Indigenous Peoples Day, and we are currently in the midst of multiple ongoing genocides facing the Indigenous people across the world, and land back everywhere. Not just land back, as Neuro Riot said earlier, but there's so much more to it. Knowledge back, children back, water back, culture back, like liberation. All right.
We must purge genocide from the marrow of our bones.
All right, it's got it. Not just land back, but water back, knowledge back, parenting back, education back, artifacts back, bodies back, ceremony back. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate having, like, when we do have more Indigenous voices to speak, and it's been tough. AC, what's up on the YouTubes?
Israeli outlet Haaretz has a new article out titled Israeli Defense Officials, Government Pushing Aside Hostage Deal, Eyeing Gaza Annexation. And it's exactly what it sounds like.
Ridiculous.
Anonymous senior Israeli officials are telling the press that the government has abandoned any notion of securing a hostage deal and is now working toward the gradual annexation of large parts of the Gaza Strip. Haaretz's sources say the full siege and other war crimes we've been hearing about in northern Gaza were put into effect without much planning in order to force the civilian population southward to avoid starvation and extermination, and that the Israeli military is moving forward with the operation despite knowing that it will probably get hostages in the area killed. So there you have it. After a full year, they're finally beginning to admit what this has always been about. This was never about freeing hostages. It was never about getting rid of Hamas. It was never about Israel's right to defend itself. It was never about mass rapes, beheaded babies, or babies cooked in ovens. It was always about stealing land from the indigenous people of Palestine. Humanity can't keep living like this. When will it end? When will we stop with the land grabs and ethnic cleansing of indigenous populations? When will we stop slaughtering human beings for territory and resources? When will we finally awaken from our murderousness and greed and become a conscious species? Yesterday I had a brief exchange with somebody about Germany and its facilitation of Israel's genocidal atrocities in Gaza. He said that because the Germans were hammered with guilt for trying to exterminate the Jews, they then threw their energy into doing the polar opposite with their unconditional support for Israel's actions. I told him the polar opposite of trying to exterminate the Jews is definitely not helping a Jewish ethnostate exterminate an indigenous population. The polar opposite of trying to exterminate the Jews would have been to transform German society into a kind, gentle, peaceful nation full of kind, gentle, peaceful people who could never stand to see anything like the Holocaust ever happen again. After the Holocaust, there was a chance to do that, not only in Germany but throughout the Western world. We could have let that political moment galvanize us into transforming into a just, compassionate, peaceful civilization, so firmly against racism, inequality, and abuse that the seeds of any future holocausts would immediately fail to take root. Instead, we decided to set up a Zionist apartheid state and help it kill anyone it wants. We could have expunged those forces within us that gave rise to the Holocaust, but instead we just redirected them and gave them different jobs. We got rid of the Nazi Party, but we didn't get rid of the soil within ourselves which allowed the seeds of Nazism to find purchase. We took the Third Reich out of Germany, but we didn't take the Third Reich out of the Germans. If we are to survive on this planet, we're going to have to learn how to coexist peacefully with each other. These mental disorders of competition and domination have placed us on the brink of annihilation by nuclear war or environmental collapse. We can't keep doing this anymore. If humanity is to survive, it needs to transform. It won't be enough to end the genocide in Gaza. We've got to uproot the things within ourselves which can give rise to genocide. We all live on land that was taken from other civilizations, many, like those of us here in Australia, much more recently than people in other parts of the world. We need to find a way to abandon such impulses and leave them in the dustbin of history for something healthier if we are to keep living in this world. We've got to end the genocide, and we've got to purge genocide from the very marrow of our bones. We've got to get rid of everything in our society, in our governments, and in ourselves which could ever give rise to genocidal atrocities again. We've got to become a kind and caring people. We've got to abandon the competition-based systems which drive human behavior in favor of collaboration-based ones, which allow us to work together with each other and with our ecosystem for the common good of all beings. And we've got to get rid of anything within ourselves which stands in the way of this. Opposing the Western war machine is the most important thing you can do. If there's one thing this past year has made clear, it's that opposing the foreign abuses of the Western Empire is the most important task you can undertake if you care about truth, justice, and human rights. There are other important fronts upon which this struggle takes place, but opposing Western warmongering, militarism, and empire building is the most important. It's the most important because it's the most consequential. Western warmongering is responsible for the most death, destruction, displacement, and human suffering out of any of the abusive policies our governments inflict upon people. As abusive as domestic issues can be, nobody here at home has to worry about Western bombs being dropped on their houses. Foreign abuses get less attention than domestic issues because they are inflicted upon strangers in other countries instead of upon our friends and neighbors. And because the imperial media work tirelessly to convince us that those foreign abuses are good and necessary. But they are the worst.
On YouTube? Hell yeah.
Foreign abuses also get less attention than domestic issues.
What y'all been doing?
Because opposing foreign abuses puts you at odds with all mainstream Western political parties and everyone who supports them.
We hadn't talked about it yet,
who might be on your side with regard to racist policing policies or LGBT rights will be...
Yeah, so everyone, One Great Earth over here on Twitch is a streamer who does politics and focuses on climate and science and nature, and just has a really interesting point of view, and is somebody you should definitely be following and subscribe to if you can. But yeah, I saw that you had gotten the $27 raid, and I was like, let's make it a special night, you know? So I was like, or the 27 club, my bad. And so yeah, and then I was like, I saw that Vitingale was trying to get a hype train started a little bit earlier, and I was like, I think with my folks all together and with me, we can make it happen. Hell yeah, first ever hype train yesterday. So go support, go follow. Like to get double penetrated, do you? Sorry, Soul Life. I know. I was trying to pause it. I was trying to pause it. It was a challenge. Hi. I'm so happy to see everyone. First live stream I've caught so far. Planning on plenty more. Well, welcome to the community, Alex. I appreciate that. Yeah, I stream every day on Twitch, and then YouTube is a bit more sporadic. So if you want to catch a live stream every day, you can sign up. You can just watch on Twitch. You don't even have to sign up, but you have to sign up to chat. This is my main platform. And yeah, you can subscribe there and get discords and fun stuff. So I've been thinking about making Twitch subs get a merch discount, because like since I'm not monetized on YouTube and it's going to take a while to get there, like there's no ads. So it's like, well, why wouldn't you just watch on the platform with no ads where you can subscribe for free and it doesn't cost anything, versus Twitch where it feels like it costs money to watch. So I'm like, maybe I should offer a merch discount on the Twitch subs, because there's a way to do that. So we may do that. We may make a Twitch sub incentive like that. But in the meantime, check out the merch store. Speaking of, also announcements. Halloween, I don't know what you're doing, but we will be doing tarot readings with my mom. Super exciting. I believe we're gonna do that on Twitch exclusive, because might be a little difficult to manage the readings with two chats. Haven't decided though. But it was a Twitch sub goal reward, so the reading should be for Twitch people. But yeah, I should probably just do it on Twitch. Sorry, YouTubes. Maybe I'll upload the VOD so you guys can see the magic. My mom is an amazing witch. On stream? Yes. Yes, we'll be doing tarot readings on stream with my mom on Halloween nights. Don't have Twitch, but yeah, I guess I could watch it without logging in. And again, I'm too busy to watch several streams each week, so I'm probably just gonna stay on YouTube. That's cool, Alex. That's why I am trying to get onto both, so we can just, you know, grow the community and reach more people. It did not, Soul Life. But please don't, oh God, don't troll my mom. Okay. We're gonna get through these. So what's on the agenda? What's on the agenda? What's going on? I've got stuff on my hands. Hey Kit, congratulations on being first. Yes. Kit, good to have you. Alex, good to have you. Dan, Pendulous Dragon, Mo, Seth. I see you, Seth. Neuro Riot out there. And of course, Joker and Knight Rider holding it down. You have such an amazing community. I love you guys. You're the best. Alright, so we are going to... Yeah, please tip the streamer. Streamer is Poe. Streamer is trying to move. We're desperately funding a move. Oh, any amount helps. Okay. We are going to get through two more of these Caitlin Johnston writings, then move on to a piece from Breaking Points. We've got a lot of updates, like just straight news, bad graphic news from Palestine, so we're gonna have to take a quick look at some of what's been going on. Well, that's cool. You just decided to like not work. We got a piece from Breaking Points, or I meant Breakthrough News. So yeah, we got some good stuff to get through. And then I found some things about Land Back that I think we should watch, because it's Indigenous Peoples Day. So I'm gonna try to rearrange the playlist a little bit, but you can find all the links if you hit !watching in chat. It will bring up a playlist to everything that we're gonna be enjoying today. I love being able to chat while watching these non-live videos. Huh?
Opposing the Western war machine is the most important thing you can do. If there's one thing this past year has made clear, it's that opposing the foreign abuses of the Western Empire is the most important task you can undertake if you care about truth, justice, and human rights. There are other important fronts upon which this struggle takes place, but opposing Western warmongering, militarism, and empire building is the most important. It's the most important because it's the most consequential. Western warmongering is responsible for the most death, destruction, displacement, and human suffering out of any of the abusive policies our governments inflict upon people. As abusive as domestic issues can be, nobody here at home has to worry about Western bombs being dropped on their houses. Foreign abuses get less attention than domestic issues because they are inflicted upon strangers in other countries instead of upon our friends and neighbors, and because the imperial media work tirelessly to convince us that those foreign abuses are good and necessary. But they are the worst. Foreign abuses also get less attention than domestic issues because opposing foreign abuses puts you at odds with all mainstream Western political parties and everyone who supports them. Your progressive friends who might be on your side with regard to racist policing policies or LGBT rights will be uncomfortably at odds with you when you start calling Kamala Harris a genocidal monster. This makes standing against the imperial war machine less fun than other, more widely supported expressions of activism. It's also less egoically gratifying. In a Western quote-unquote left that generates so much of its energy from identity politics, where everyone wants to see themselves as part of some marginalized minority who can finger wag about the privilege of non-marginalized groups, it's a bit deflating to realize that as a Westerner, you're part of the problem, and that you receive a fair amount of privilege yourself just from living where you live. Depending on what your politics are like, it can be a kick in the ego to get real about the fact that however underprivileged you might see yourself, you still directly materially benefit from the imperialist extraction of the global south that all this warmongering is meant to protect. It can be a hard pill to swallow that even if you're an autistic, biracial, trans, pansexual, you're still sitting a lot more comfortably than any straight cis man in Gaza, and your concerns for your safety and security are much less urgent than his. But the biggest reason why foreign abuses get less attention than domestic ones is because of the propaganda.
CJ from the Six.
War is the glue that holds the empire together. So our rulers do everything they can to keep us arguing about domestic policy and ignoring foreign policy. The imperial spinmeisters wildly exaggerate the differences between the two mainstream political factions, while downplaying the empire's foreign abuses as normal and nothing to worry about, because the last thing they want is the rise of a robust anti-war movement in powerful Western countries. If you take your stand against the imperial war machine, you are standing against the very most abusive and tyrannical injustices in our world. But you are also standing against what everyone around you has been trained to believe is the truth. If you oppose the imperial war machine consistently and forcefully, you are setting yourself up to look like a kook, a traitor, or a weird contrarian in the eyes of other Westerners. Not because anything you are saying is wrong, but because they have been indoctrinated to believe the opposite of what you are saying about the nations and groups that are being targeted for destruction by the Western Empire. The other day, some liberal American author retweeted an anti-war thing I wrote with the comment, "This is one of the most fascinating accounts on Twitter. She's like an AI programmed to say the opposite of what everyone agrees makes sense. Everyone crazy on the left and right follows her, 400,000 people. The replies people are like her, well considered, reasonably informed, and totally off the rails." This stood out for me because it's like a condensed version of all the criticisms I've received from denizens of the Western Empire over the years. Look at this weirdo. She's saying the exact opposite of everything we all agree is the truth.
I like to call the Kit Fam denizens. At no time has it ever occurred to this person to seriously examine why it is that everyone he knows agrees with the narratives which support the geostrategic objectives of the US government and its allies, thereby making anyone who contradicts these narratives look like a deranged nut. He just takes it as a given that all the information he ingests about international affairs aligns perfectly with the foreign policy objectives of his government, because his government is simply on the side of truth and virtue. The well-documented fact that the mass media administer propaganda to advance the information interests of the US empire never crosses his mind as a real possibility. That's the current you are swimming against when you take your stand against Western warmongering. The current of the most sophisticated propaganda machine that has ever existed. It can be challenging to consistently speak the truth in this way to a civilization that is deeply indoctrinated to believe in lies. But it is also the very most important work you can do, because it helps spread awareness of the single most urgent and egregious injustice in our world today. And that's how you change the world. Spreading awareness. Problems don't get fixed until enough people see them and understand them. Once enough people do, using the power of our numbers to force real change becomes a real possibility. And there is nothing more urgently in need of real change than the end of Western warmongering.
Israel's motto is, "We can have peace tomorrow if we just kill a few more people today." Israel's permanent national security doctrine is basically, we can have peace tomorrow if we just kill a few more people today. But it's always today. Tomorrow never comes. Israel never succeeds in killing its way to peace, because that's not actually a thing. You can't murder, oppress, and tyrannize people into obedience. You can kill off the people who oppose you, but in doing so, you just create more people who oppose you. You can scorch the earth, killing off every member of Hamas and Hezbollah, but in so doing, you just ensure the birth of more Hamases and Hezbollahs. The only way to murder a population into submission is to kill everyone, to turn the entire Middle East into a barren wasteland of death and destruction, so there's nobody left living to oppose you. That's the only way kill today to have peace tomorrow can win. And in fairness, it did work for other Western settler colonialist projects. In North America and Australia, the white man just killed and killed and killed and killed until the opposition was exterminated and the few who remained were broken. But the indigenous population of historic Palestine is different in that it doesn't stand alone. They are surrounded by ancient civilizations who have a long-standing relationship with them, and a kinship of religion and culture. Any move to exterminate the indigenous population, like other Western settler colonialist projects have done, draws hostilities from surrounding nations, as we are seeing today. So in order for Israel to kill its way into peace, it needs to not just kill off the Palestinians, but kill anyone in the surrounding region who would oppose its doing so. And the Israelis know this, which is why you hear some far-right Zionists talking about the need for a greater Israel whose territory extends beyond Israel's current borders. So Israel will always exist in a continuous state of war until it either A, ceases to exist in its present tyrannical iteration, or B, kills or breaks all its enemies throughout West Asia. That's the only way the dust can ever settle on the killing. And that's why Israel cannot continue to exist in its present iteration. It was a very, very bad idea, just like all the many other very, very bad ideas throughout history, like slavery. In order for the killing to end, the murderous settler colonialist project known as Israel must end. This is a big task, but so was freeing the slaves. The only alternative is to plunge further and further down along this trajectory toward more and more killing, drawing in more and more powerful military forces and exponentially expanding the death toll in the process. A massive war between Israel's powerful Western allies against Iran and its partners in the region would kill millions upon millions of people and devastate the world economy. But that's precisely the trajectory that the Western support for Israel's killing campaigns has us on. I find this an untenable prospect. It would be much less devastating to dismantle the apartheid state of Israel and make arrangements for the West to absorb anyone who wishes to flee from a state where everyone would have equal rights. It would be difficult, it would be inconvenient, but it would be much, much easier and more ethical than helping Israel continue enacting its kill today to have peace tomorrow doctrine. Nobody has ever presented an argument for why Israel should continue to exist in its present iteration that is both logically and morally defensible. It's just a crazy, stupid thing we are doing, the same as all the other crazy, stupid things we've done throughout history. One day, this will be seen clearly by everyone.
Now, Israel has been preventing the entry of life-saving supplies into Gaza. The UN World Food Programme says no food has made it into the north of the Strip since the start of this month. In a statement, WFP says the north is basically cut off and we're not able to operate there. Without safe and sustained access, it is virtually impossible to reach the people in need. WFP has been able to bring in only 4% of the food needed to sustain 1 million people in Gaza this month. People have run out of ways to cope, food systems have collapsed, and the risk of famine is real. Let's speak to Bushra Khalidi about this. She is the policy leader at Oxfam and is joining us from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Thank you for your time. Let's talk about the situation in northern Gaza first, if we can. I know you're in constant communication and coordination with the Oxfam team in the north. What are they telling you about the current humanitarian situation, especially in the Jabalia refugee camp?
So unfortunately, I was not able to join any of my partners or my colleagues on specifically Jabalia, Beit Hanun, and kind of the most northern part of the northern governorate. I was able to speak to my colleagues that are in Gaza City at the moment. They can see from their windows the smoke coming out of the north. That's how close they are to it, and that's how destructive the incursion on the Jabalia and the northern areas has been. Israel's operations have been. They can hear that their house is constantly shaking. There's very little food. They only have canned food at the moment. A friend of mine, actually, I spoke to, he's in Gaza City. He's not even in the north. All he has for the next 3 days is bread and 2 cans of peas, green peas, for him and his family. We're seeing the same images that we were seeing a year ago. We're seeing the same forced evacuations. We're seeing the same besieging of homes, of hospitals, of the refugee camps in the north. The pictures that we've been seeing for the last week have been absolutely horrifying and chilling to my core.
Right. And so, Bushra, you haven't been able to directly speak to your colleagues in places like Jabalia or Beit Lahia. But we have heard from various reports that Israel is telling people to leave these areas, but at the same time preventing them to do so. What more have you heard about that?
That's exactly the same reports that I've received from my colleagues that are in Gaza City who have family in the north, in the Jabalia area, that have been unable to leave their homes for days, and basically running out of food with no water, and they're unable to leave because they shoot anybody down that leaves. The evacuation routes and orders, I mean, as usual, they've caused chaos, they've caused confusion, and they've not been really respected. And that's been the case for these evacuation orders and these forcible displacement orders. This has been the case since the beginning of the war. They've caused panic, they've caused confusion, and they've actually killed people. Actually, a colleague of mine called forcible displacement orders a death march, because people don't know if they're going to survive evacuating or not. And most people, in fact, are choosing not to evacuate or leave their homes, and understandably so.
Yeah, indeed. And they're choosing to stay with, as you say, very little food or water left, because no aid has gone in for the past 10 days, at least, in northern Gaza. You mentioned that you have teams, Bushra, in Gaza City. What types of challenges are they facing right now? Are they able to assist people who've left places like Jabalia and who've managed to make it into Gaza City?
I'm really sorry, and it's absolutely unfortunate, and I hate having to sit here and say, no, we've not been able to help anybody in the north for the last month. We've not been able to enter any of our trucks into the north for the last 4 weeks. And that should be chilling everybody to their core as well. The fact that no aid has come into the north since the beginning of this month, and that organizations like ours haven't been able to deliver in the north, is unacceptable. It is actually a breach of our duty of care and our duty of being able to serve the most vulnerable and the most affected communities. We're unable to deliver in the north whatsoever. That is the current position, because we can't get an aid into either one of the northern crossings, or we can't travel from the south to the north with the trucks that arrive through Kerem Shalom, because of Israel besieging the north and cutting the north off completely from the south.
So how are people surviving, Bushra, currently?
People are not surviving. People are very likely dying of starvation, as they have been from the beginning of the war. And people have also shown extreme resilience in waves of starvations and famines that we have seen over the last 12 months, eating animal fodder, eating bird food, eating donkeys and horses. The problem is that now we're talking about levels of destruction that didn't exist maybe a couple months ago. And so I don't know how people are going to survive. It's very likely that either people will die of starvation, will die in the massacres that we're seeing happen in the north, or will die, trying to evacuate to the south. Also, it's very important to note that many people are unable to leave because they have elderly parents. Elderly parents can't walk for 4, 5, 6 a whole day in order to seek some sort of safety that doesn't really exist in the entire strip either. And furthermore, they're not going to safety, and this is why they're not leaving their homes. People are ready to die in their homes, whether that's from hunger or from the bombs. People are resolute to not leaving their homes and not leaving the north because there's no guarantees for them that they would stay alive or survive if they did.
Bushra, thank you so much for talking to us and giving us a picture there of the situation in northern Gaza right now as Israel continues to lay siege on the north, on places like Jabalia and Beit Lahia. Thank you. Bushra Khalidi is from Oxfam, joining us there from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so lot going on, lot that's very disturbing. We're going to get to that with regard to the latest Israeli strike on Gaza, but wanted to start with this. You can put this up on the screen. Latest numbers are that 67 people were wounded. These were all soldiers wounded Sunday after a drone struck an IDF base in Israel. This was a Hezbollah.
I'm trying to get a kitty cam working. We have Reg. Yes, I have the Rebecca Watson video in the playlist. Awesome. Thank you, Soul Life. Hey, Mike, where are you from? I'm curious. Yeah, I don't think shrooms are legal there. So I'm gonna pass. They're legal in some places, though. Right Wing Central. We have Kitty Cam. So cute. He's enjoying the sunshine, looking out the window. Oh my gosh. There we go. There we go. Oh my gosh, live kitty cam. Okay, so yeah, Biden is sending US troops to, quote, protect Israel.
Okay, so lot going on, lot that's very disturbing. We're going to get to that with regard to the latest Israeli strike on Gaza, but wanted to start with this. You can put this up on the screen. Latest numbers are that 67 people were wounded. These were all soldiers wounded Sunday after a drone struck an IDF base in Israel. This was a Hezbollah drone strike. You also had a number of people, 4 who I believe were killed. So you've had a significant number of casualties here. And part of what is so significant here is that this drone was able to get through their, extensive anti-missile defense systems. So Iron Dome failed, and they're looking into why that happened and how this was able to get through. Apparently, there was another drone that attempted to get through as well. They were able to intercept that one, but this one was successful. The Army, they say, is investigating why no sirens are sounded and why interception attempts failed, as well as the drone's route. In addition, earlier in that same day, 28 IDF soldiers were wounded by anti-tank fire in 2 separate incidents in Lebanon. We can put up on the screen this image of the cross-border attacks because I just don't want people to get a false impression here. So obviously...
How do I feel about what, dude? U.S. sending troops to Israel? I think it's terrible. I think it shows that we are giving, it's a tacit endorsement to Israel's continuous bombardments of both Palestine and now Lebanon. And it's horrific. It's absolutely horrific that the more Israel expanded its genocide, the more support it got. Absolutely horrific.
Obviously, Hezbollah has been firing back, but it's still a very one-sided conflict overall. It's very, very unbalanced towards the Israeli side. You have 12,000 roughly combined cross-border attacks. 9,891 of those were Israeli attacks on Lebanon. You've had 2,163, which were Hezbollah and others attacks on Israel. Total combined deaths, 1,562. Of those, almost all of them were Lebanese people, 1,529, just 33 Israelis killed in these cross-border attacks. Nevertheless, are obviously incredibly significant in terms of Israeli sense of security. They've been sold by their leadership class that the way for them to be safe and to be able to return to northern Israel towns that have been evacuated since October 7th is through war, is through bullets and guns and missiles and drones and bombs. And they also, I think really thought they had degraded Hezbollah to the point that it was probably just going to kind of fall apart. Assassinated Nasrallah. You had that massive pager and walkie-talkie attack, and Hezbollah showing here that they still have a lot of fighting power and still have an ability to strike within Israel. Important, though, I really want to emphasize the fact that, Hezbollah here striking a legitimate military target. And I think a lot of people should ponder the fact that the military that we're backing, which we're about to talk about in a minute, the IDF, the one that we're shipping the bombs for, just attacked a hospital with a tent city of refugees filled with patients, and children and women. And the ones that we call terrorists are attacking legitimate military targets and going after soldiers.
Well, what I think it highlights is more the lack of security and the ability for them to actually penetrate IDF defenses. And it just is the same thing where, look, yes, you can wipe out Nasrallah and all that, but everything you kept saying here, Hezbollah is a much more capable force. Also, I want everybody to understand how much that this is the preview of what warfare looks like in the 21st century. This drone hitting a cafeteria, this has been going on in Ukraine now for 3 straight years. And that's exactly how they've been able to kill a ton of Ukrainians, to kill a ton of Russians. There are so many horrible drone videos out there of them just following people. So the point is that this type of warfare is exactly the way that they're trying to get around traditional weapon systems, rockets, missiles, and all of that, penetrate it very, very small and still be able to really, cause significant amounts of damage. This is one of the very deadly incident inside of Israel for the IDF. Another one is, let's underscore the U.S. commitment to this. not nearly enough people are understanding the gravity of what has now been announced by the Biden administration. Let's put this up there on the screen. U.S. is going to deploy 100 troops to operate an advanced anti-missile system in Israel amidst high tensions. What we are talking about is the THAAD missile defense system, the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense. I was actually pretty familiar with that. I covered a lot of it with respect to South Korea. It is one of our most advanced anti-missile defense technologies, and it is one of those that is, you can see it actually in front of you on the mobile trucks. It makes it very easy to deploy and all of that. But the point is that if you think about this system and why it's so important, is it is physically incapable to run it without American soldiers on the ground. It's one of the reasons why the Ukrainians have been begging America for a THAAD system basically since the beginning of the war. And we're like, no, we're not going to do it because we'd have to put our own guys on the ground. But now think about this. Not only would we have our guys operating an anti-missile defense system, but what do you think the #1 target of a drone or any of these other places is going to be? Is that. And so that means we're putting our people in an extremely high-risk situation, and nobody in the U.S. political establishment is saying a damn word about it. Joe Biden promised there would be no troops, that boots on the ground, for the defense of Israel. Well, already that was a lie with the whole Gaza pier situation. It was a lie previously whenever 3 of our guys were killed in that Jordanian, Syria insane raid, or in the drone attack, which still nobody's ever answered any questions about. But this is the most direct intervention by the United States. It also just increases. It also shows the Israelis brag about Arrow 3 and Arrow 2 and all of that.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, and there's some worries with Iran, what are they doing? And they're like, hey, we need THAAD. What does that tell you? It shows you that their missile defense technology, which we pay for and build, is still not all that operable, and they need some of the highest level of U.S. defense to keep them where they're at. But worse, I think, is that it gives them the ability, they can do whatever they want now. You can go and hit a nuclear site if you want to.
Right.
Now you've got Big Daddy America and 100 U.S. soldiers who are defending you.
Yeah.
And this is basically an insurance policy for the coming massive strike on Iran.
That's correct.
That will happen. And that's why I'm scared, because now our people are the ones who are in danger.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And you're so right to point out, too, that, listen, our boots are already on the ground because we have 40,000 people in the region, and it's a regional war. And if you think it's not, just look at all of the countries that are being bombed right now. Like, you're deluding yourself if you don't think that those soldiers are already at risk. But with regard to this move specifically, we're getting these reports that Biden talked to Bibi and he doesn't want him to strike Iranian oil infrastructure, that he doesn't want him to strike Iranian nuclear sites. But then you're giving him all the protection in the world so that he can operate with impunity and not bear any of the costs.
So it's like high altitude missile defense. That's the most I know about it. Like, it has to do with high altitude air missile defense.
So again, obviously Bibi is going to do exactly what he wants, because you are not using any leverage. In fact, you're doing the opposite of that. You are enabling this behavior because they will not bear any of the cost. Instead, we're putting our soldiers' lives at risk and putting this, expensive system into the region. It's just, from a policy perspective, it's utterly, utterly insane. But that's where we are, and the total lack of any discussion, debate, controversy around this is astonishing. It's utterly astonishing what we stand on the precipice of and how little care, concern, discussion, debate there is in the United States Congress, or certainly on the cable news airwaves. At the same time, we wanted to make sure and bring you this. The Israelis struck UN peacekeepers, these Irish peacekeepers who, this UN peacekeeping force has been in southern Lebanon for quite a long time. And the Israelis told them, you need to leave. And they said, no, we're going to hold our post. Like, we have an important mission. You don't get to tell us when we're going to leave, so we're going to stay. So Benjamin Netanyahu, you can put this up on the screen. It was in Hebrew, so I'll just read some of the translation here. He demanded that these forces be evacuated removed from South Lebanon immediately. He says that they're going to be used as human shields by Hezbollah. He said specifically, I appeal to the UN Secretary General, your refusal to evacuate UNIFIL soldiers has turned them into hostages of Hezbollah. So we all know when the Israelis break out that human shield language, that means you're a target. That means we are not going to care whether you live or die. In fact, if anything, we're happy for you to die. It wasn't long before we got this. Irish troops, quote, accounted for after reported Lebanon strike. UN sources told Reuters that Israeli troops opened fire at 3 positions held by UN peacekeepers in southern Lebanon on Thursday. This is this United Nations interim force in Lebanon has been there since 1978. It's meant to monitor hostilities, helps to ensure humanitarian access to civilians. And they put out a long thread on Twitter on Thursday morning saying that 2 peacekeepers were injured after an IDF tank fired its weapon towards an observation tower at their headquarters, directly hitting it and causing them to fall. It said their injuries are not serious, but they do remain in the hospital. They also fired IDF soldiers on a UN position in another town, hitting the entrance to the bunker where peacekeepers were sheltering and damaging vehicles and a communication system. An IDF drone was observed flying inside the UN position up to the bunker. And in addition, peacekeepers at that position reported the firing of several rounds which emitted smoke. Despite putting on protective masks, 15 of those peacekeepers suffered effects, including skin irritation and gastrointestinal reactions after the smoke entered the camp. The peacekeepers are receiving treatment. So IDF is firing on and gassing, apparently, UN peacekeepers now. And, the silence from the United States of America and the rest of the supposedly committed to human rights West is absolutely deafening.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous, isn't it? It's also just funny because if you think about the way that we would respond, let's say if this was a country called Russia, well, then things fall apart now, don't they?
Can you imagine?
Of course I can. I already know because we've seen it. Look at all these. Look at the number of times that the way Biden and all of them talk about, the United Nations is spoken out against the Ukraine invasion and all of that. So if you're Russia, also, what's the lesson from this? They're like, yeah, we can just do whatever we want. They're like, they don't mean anything. If you're China, if you're any of these people, you're like, look at these. These people are a joke. They're like, all these international institutions mean nothing. I mean, the entire basis of their theory of the international rules-based order and all of that is being undermined here. Also, again, I just can't get away from the cost. That costs $1 billion. Plus, we have $100 people who are put in harm's way. The general back of the napkin math is it takes $1 million per year per soldier to keep them deployed abroad. So that's 100 mil, and then you add in another bill. They're like, okay, 1.1 billion here just to make sure that they can do whatever they want to Iran, not to mention the $1 billion we just fired off and more. Like, why should we pay this bill? Why is this worth it? For what possible reason? And then the damage to the overall U.S. image is just ridiculous now at this point.
Oh, I mean, it's, what can you even say at this point? Like, there's things that we're about to talk about this. Things that would have been a controversy a year ago now just happen and no one even notices. I mean, remember there was a whole propaganda campaign around justifying the invasion of one hospital. Now hospitals just get bombed, schools just get bombed, refugee shelters just get bombed. UN peacekeepers, okay? And now we're in, bombing the hell out of Beirut and, dropping 86 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs to get one dude, slaughtering civilians who are not Hamas, have nothing to do with Hamas,
This is turning into a revolution.
And it's just like a shoulder
Consistent
shrug.
Mike gifted one
I don't know.
subscription.
I mean, it's so incredibly
Thank you,
dark.
Consistent Mike.
It is also
Thank you so much for
totally
supporting
clear
the stream.
that
I really appreciate that.
nihilistic, most cynical analysis of Israeli plans for genocide, ethnic cleansing, regional war with Iran, dragging us into it. The most cynical analysis that occurred on, October 8th turned out to be 100% correct, if not sort of understating where we would ultimately head.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really
Yeah, that was an odd edit. Welcome back, Joker. Glad you got a beverage. Twitch chat, we do have the opportunity to start a hype train. If we have one more unique gifter with 100 biddies or a sub, we can add chemicals to the water and turn the frogs gay. I think we have a few minutes to do that if you want to support the stream. I'm catching up on chats. Oh, you're in ad jail. I'm sorry. Sure you did, Joker.
Wars in general are actually very good for the economy, not during, but after.
While the war on Gaza rages on, Israel's expanding illegal settlements at a record pace as real estate firms look for buyers abroad.
Prices in Israel for the first
horrible. So Israel is auctioning off pieces of the West Bank to Americans, like right now. Speaking of which, it's gonna be hard for me to make it to the post office when I meet up with Jen for dinner tonight. I think I'll just have her. Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, so will I tell him to come over to Twitch and start a hype train? I think we probably missed it. It's okay. Oh.
I don't like the chemicals in the water.
Love 100. The underscore anti-corporatist cheered 100 bits.
Serious crap. Gay.
Yo, Jesus.
It's not funny. I'm gonna say it real slow for you. Gay. Frogs. Won't you fight for your life? Gay. Frog, friggin' frog. I don't like a frog. Gay. Friggin' frog. Quack, 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 quack. Frog.
Cheer 100.
Won't you fight the
CJ
frog?
from the 6 cheer 200 bits.
It's not funny. I'm gonna say it real slow for you. Place point.
Sometimes I feel like Karl Marx, but I would be dogmatic.
Cheer
Sipping all this
100.
drink, I just spilled it on my
MZZB cheered
fabric.
100
If you have
bits.
that knowledge, then you know you
Thank
need
you,
to
MZB.
praxis. Red book on my lap, you can never catch me lacking. Sometimes I feel like Karl Marx, but that would be dogmatic. Sipping all this drink, I just spilled it on my fabric. If you have the knowledge, then you know you need to. Red book on my lap, you can never catch me lacking. I don't worship idols, man, that shit just be so corny. I be with the masses cause the rich just be so boring. I be on the internet whenever I feel lonely, and I rather feel like Che Guevara than ever be Tony. Tell my mama when I grow up, sorry I'm a communist. Take a flight to Cuba, roll a blow right in that bit. All up in Jamaica, swear you need to see this shit. She don't wear no makeup, wanna give me all of it. We should take like all of it, we should take like all of it. Careful who you talk to cause they fed and they be counterfeit. I switched out the AR for the AK like a Soviet. Say I get her high like some opiates. Sometimes I feel like Karl Marx, but that would be dogmatic. Sipping all this drink, I just spilled it on my fabric. If you have that knowledge, then you know you need the red book on my lap, you can never catch me lacking. Sometimes I feel like Karl Marx, but that would be dogmatic.
Lord Schmegglesworth, I'm so sorry. Lord Schmegglesworth. I think the mushies may be kicking in. Let's go. I hope they make you feel amazing. Chat, we've got 2 minutes on this hype train. Can we make it to level 2? halfway there. Whoa.
5, 6, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Welcome back, Barrett. Call me hot now, pretty. White person chair dancing, lady badass. Ouch. No, we're not gonna make it. Aww. That's okay. Maybe next time. I'm like obsessed with Chapel Roan, so that's amazing. I wanted to see her. She played near me in May, and I was gonna try to go, but it was too expensive. It was like $80. Like, I don't have $80 for a show. Yeah, definitely can't rationalize $80 for a show. Like, no. It's a Chapel Roan cover. No, you don't get any extra. We didn't make it. You get no extra fun. I like the shows in an apartment building. Yeah. I haven't been to like a house show since I lived in Denver. Those are fun. Backyard shows and shit. Alright. What was I gonna get into next? Oh yeah, we were in the middle of the...
Wars in general are actually very good for the economy. Not during, but after.
While the war on Gaza rages on, Israel's expanding illegal settlements at a record pace as real estate firms look for buyers abroad.
Prices in Israel for the first time have gone down slightly, and it's a great time to buy.
AJ Plus has obtained footage from several real estate expos featuring franchises for Keller Williams, one of the largest real estate agencies in the US, which has listed illegal settlements on its Israel website.
That land does not belong to them. It belongs to Palestinian families that's been there for generations.
When Israel is dropping bombs on the children of Gaza, maybe that's not the right time to promote West Bank settlement real estate.
We're in Teaneck, New Jersey, where a tight-knit, modern Orthodox Jewish community is confronting pro-Palestinian activists who say the town's become a conduit for the sale of occupied Palestinian land and anti-Arab
Oh yeah, I know this
harassment,
isn't new.
and that many of its own elected leaders are the ones encouraging it.
Ma'am, what are you doing to ensure Muslim, Arab, and Jewish residents feel safe in this community?
Now, some residents want answers from the state's most powerful politicians who they say are defying the US's own position that Israeli settlements are illegitimate.
Hi, Representative Gottheimer. Why are you allowing events that are illegal under international law to happen in this town? Congressman.
You're Israeli? Like, well, what do you mean? I don't understand.
Teaneck, New Jersey is located just outside New York City. It's known for being racially diverse and for its sizable Jewish population.
You know that I'm a church music director.
Yes.
Yeah, it's every Jewish parent's dream job for their Jewish son to become a church music director.
Where are you really from?
That's a stupid joke.
This is Teaneck resident Rich Siegel. He went viral on the internet after he asked the town council to shut down an Israeli real estate event.
What this real estate event is going to do is it's going to fan the flames. If it goes
So you're American Israeli. Got it.
Goes forward, there will be a demonstration. I know there's going to be a demonstration because I'm going to organize it.
But pro-Palestinian voices have faced major backlash, especially for protesting in front of synagogues where most of these real estate events happen.
This is the issue of the Jewish link that came out right after that. And you can see the headline is Hate March Through Teaneck. Look at this, pro-Palestinian mob. The word mob, can you imagine anything more incendiary? And it's in print here. Look at this. They have events here to promote settlement expansion.
The paper that runs ads for these real estate events is co-published by town councilman Mark Schwartz. In fact, residents tell us a number of town council members have contributed to an atmosphere of hostility and misinformation. That includes Mayor Michael Pagan, who's denied Israel's genocide on Gaza,
my whole
and Councilwoman Hillary Goldberg.
Since Israel is a settler colony, when people are like born in Israel, yes, they are Israelis, but like literally everyone else that lives there is a settler from somewhere else, and like so the majority of Israelis are not actually Israelis, you know, in my opinion. And so that's why I'm like, well, it's a shit show. They are all settlers. Yeah, that's my point. You know, like the project is a settler colonial project. So even if you were born in Israel, you're still the descendant of settler colonizers. Like I'm a descendant of settler colonizers. Well, not settler colonizers, but my family immigrated. I'm the descendant of European immigrants. And I think on my dad's side, maybe they go back towards like the colonizing era. I don't really know. But like either way, I'm a white European fucking living in North America, and you got to understand whose land you're on. American Israeli, European American, but I'm not American American. Hell yeah. No, I get what you mean. You don't want to like, you're not like a proud Israeli American or anything. I wasn't trying to label you that way. My family is both colonizer and victim of colonization. Yeah, I'm a mutt. Word. Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely not proud of my country. So like I agree. I feel you. My parents are religious fundamentalists. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm glad you escaped your cult, for lack of a better term. and descendant of immigrants, and one dude who got fired from his job and got stuck here. Partly German and Irish, yeah. People are better looking on this side of the fence. Oh man, yeah, it's, but it takes time and it takes work to you know, break free of your mental chains. Okay.
Mob. The word mob. Can you imagine anything more incendiary? And it's in print here. Look at this. They have events here to promote settlement expansion.
The paper that runs ads for these real estate events is co-published by town councilman Mark Schwartz. In fact, residents tell us a number of town council members have contributed to an atmosphere of hostility and misinformation.
Who
that includes Mayor Michael Pagan,
in illegal activity. Like, I think that's why they're making this
Israel's
story.
genocide on Gaza, and Councilwoman Hillary Goldberg,
yeah.
a vocal supporter of Israel, who's doxed pro-Palestinian activists on her social media pages and accused them of being anti-Semitic.
Why are we out there, to hate Jews? Or are we out there because Israel's ruthlessly murdered over 32,000 people? And they're selling West Bank settlement homes directly to Jews here in New Jersey while this genocide is going on.
So why are settlements a problem? Because they're Jewish-only communities built on stolen Palestinian land, and they're illegal under international law. Put simply, that means...
Predominantly, the real estate that's being sold is redlined real estate. It's for sale for Jews only.
One prominent Teaneck rabbi appears in real estate brochures promoting his exclusively Jewish community in an exclusively Jewish town and invites others from the U.S. to join him.
This is the synagogue right over here that's been hosting the real estate sales event.
Some local Palestinian residents and allies hold car rallies to demonstrate against these events. They've asked not to be identified out of concern for retaliation by the public.
Generations of our family members have lived there, and now they're going to be kicked out by some guy from Rhode Island or Staten Island, whatever his name is. And they're doing it openly too. They're advertising it in newspapers, online, Instagram, everywhere.
One company posted an image advertising pre-sale settlements in a visibly war-torn Gaza, calling it a joke. But Israeli real estate expos are a very real thing, where agents seek buyers in countries like the US, Canada, and South Africa. They've been happening in Teaneck for nearly 20 years.
We're simply 20, 30, 40 cars driving by the town, and that alone is driving them nuts. You get people from all walks of faith, all religions, all races. You know, they say we're the violent ones, we're the ones citing hate crimes. We're just driving through town peacefully, and this is how we get attacked. It was a perfect example.
That's why this story is about so much more than illegal settlements. It's about a repeated pattern of harassment against people who criticize Israel. It's happened during town council meetings where protesters have been thrown out for being disruptive, and during a car rally when a man threatened a protester with a knife. He was later arrested.
I hear my neighbors saying that they're afraid.
I think it's a little bit different than picking up, you know, your like moving somewhere after a natural disaster within your country, because we're talking about a land that is already illegally occupied and under siege. You know, if Palestine had a state and Israel wasn't a terrorist state, this wouldn't be as much of a problem. It would be like normal immigration, right? But they're expanding into territory that is not legally theirs. It's not in Israel. It's in Palestine. So that's what makes it so different. Like, Israel is not just any country where, you know, people are like, this isn't France where they're like, hey, you want to move to France? Here's some cool houses that we're building. We're looking for American immigrants. I mean, they would never, but imagine, right? Like, that's not the same thing as what Israel is doing when they're expanding settlements, stealing Palestinian homes, destroying Palestinian olive oil orchards or olive tree orchards. Like raising their farms, like it's slaughtering, their sheep, like they're destroying their livelihoods on purpose, forcing them to leave, and then selling their land to, white Americans or rich Americans. And it's like, and it's being advertised and promoted by people who are elected to government. So, that's part of why this is much more of a story.
Afraid? Afraid of who? I'm afraid. I'm afraid to leave my home. I'm afraid to go to the store down the road because they're threatening me.
This is Reem Fakhri. Her teenage daughter Miriam and best friend Amar organized a protest to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. In response, adults in the town attended a huge counter-protest, including town council member Hillary Goldberg. She was spotted during the walkout filming the underage kids. Former councilman Keith Kaplan was next to her. Soon after, the girls started getting death threats.
Yo, you mother kill the children of Gaza.
That's a really hard message to listen to.
Yeah. Like, I woke up to this voicemail and it was just really upsetting.
It's a weird dynamic to have, to know that, like, the town council and, like,
the people who run the town
are the ones pulling it apart, and we're the ones getting blamed for it.
The town even got a congressman involved. This is Democrat Josh Gottheimer. He's staunchly pro-Israel and received some of the largest pro-Israel donations in Congress. He called the girls' protest anti-Semitic and triggered an investigation by the Department of Education.
All I want to tell him is leave my daughter's name out of your mouth. Do not talk about my child that way. And our council people who decide that they also are threatened by high school children. What is this?
Pro-Palestinian advocate Adam Weissman says people are weaponizing anti-Semitism.
As a Jewish member of this community, it is vital to challenge this falsehood that speaking up for Palestinian human rights is anti-Semitic. This argument is used cynically, it's used in bad faith. Members of this community brag about coming back from freeing Gaza from Hamas. Synagogues knit hats for members of the IDF. This community makes major contributions to political action committees supporting Israel. We have politicians who again and again seem utterly beholden to the Zionist bloc in this community.
And who use their power and platforms to smear pro-Palestinian voices, says Adam. In particular, town council members like Hillary Goldberg, who targeted Miriam and Amar's walkout.
Hi, Miss Goldberg. Angie from AJ Plus. Can I give you an interview, please? Can we talk? Ma'am, what are you doing to ensure Muslim, Arab, and Jewish residents feel safe in this community? They say you failed to protect them. Why does someone from New Jersey have more of a right to purchase property in the West Bank?
Thank you, Marcus.
It's my right to be here.
Why do some whistleblowers go to prison?
Struggle_4 raided your channel with 242 viewers.
That raid.
That's my question.
Thank you.
On what? Okay, we lost our caller there. This is a piece from The Hill, thehill.com. GOP.
Y'all are wild.
On collision.
He's fired now. Row. Suit.
That House Republicans
Dark Star Mike, welcome. Oh my goodness. All my friends. Hi, everyone. Hey, welcome. If you are new, if you don't know me, my name's Adrienne Dixon. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a non-binary, queer, autistic, disabled variety streamer. And I cover leftist news and politics and shit that I find interesting. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're new, please consider following and say what's up to chat. Hi. We are in the middle of a short piece from AJ Plus about the illegal settlements in the West Bank being sold in New York real estate agencies being promoted by like the city council getting involved and like elected officials getting involved, so like in helping promote these illegal land grabs taking place in the West Bank right now. And then these are some of the people who then labeled student protesters who protested this outside of the synagogue where they held, I don't know if you guys remember this happened a little while ago, but they held a protest outside of the synagogue where they were going to be, selling or, basically auctioning off pieces of Palestine, right? And so people protested that. But because it was outside of a synagogue, they called it anti-Semitic and investigated all the students who were involved because government fucking sucks.
You're an elected politician and you should be able to answer questions. It's your role as an elected official to answer questions.
Fortunately, the building is closed until the meeting starts. So guys, if you guys don't mind, thank you.
Well, I am just so honored to be able to give you guys a Zionist tour of Teaneck, New Jersey.
Before we go any further, let's agree on a definition. Zionism is a movement to create a Jewish state on Palestinian land.
Now, growing up Jewish and Zionist, I heard the expression redemption of the land a lot. And it sounds like a really good thing. We're redeeming the land by settling Jews there. But what does redemption of the land really mean? Kicking everybody else off, Muslims, Christians, and anybody else off the land and making it an exclusively Jewish land.
Rich was actually a Zionist for most of his life, but he points to a pivotal moment in 2004 when he read about the Nakba. That's the word Palestinians use to describe their ethnic cleansing. It means catastrophe.
Zionists, they made 750,000 people homeless in 1948 and many more in 1967, and it's been a program of ethnic cleansing for 75 years.
And Rich says Teaneck is continuing that legacy through these real estate events. One company that visited the town is called My Home in Israel, which had multiple settlement listings on its website.
Absolutely
Separately,
atrocious.
we noticed several franchises for Keller Williams also appear at these real estate events. When we visited the website for Keller Williams Israel, we found property for sale in an illegal settlement. Now take a look at this agency, Home in Israel, powered by Keller Williams. This is the owner of Home in Israel, Julian Shapiro. I visited his website to request a copy of the buying guide for foreigners, but after submitting my surname, which is Nassar, I received a strange reply. So what I got back was an email from Julian Shapiro, and the email just says, "This is a Muslim, warmest." Palestinian resident Rayed Hassan, who goes by Ray, says the discrimination he's experienced is so
Darkstar Mike, I was literally thinking about Keller Williams, the musician, and I'm like, that is so unfortunate. Shared the, yeah.
bad. He's suing the town over it.
In Teaneck, in the United States, I feel like we were under occupation.
Chatters, Raiders, there's an ad break starting in about 5 minutes. I did snooze it when y'all came in, but we are going to have to run one, so consider subscribing, or you can click over to the YouTube stream and watch over there too.
Because they won't give us a permit to open up this building.
He's been fighting for years
Not to be
fully open
confused with
his...
Sherwin-Williams, the paint company. Yeah, too many. Yeah, I always remember, and I remember like seeing signs for Keller Williams, the real estate, and like being confused because my family are like a bunch of like hippie musicians, and so like I was like, I didn't know like Keller Williams had like sold property too. No, they're not the same thing.
His community center, AUCC, even though there was a church operating in the same building before him.
Fact is, they don't want a mosque in this town. I was blatantly told to my face over my dead body.
There are 2 other mosques in Teaneck. Technically, only a small part of AUCC can operate, but that hasn't stopped a few people from coming in.
How long you been training, Sonny?
Oh, for about 30 years.
Wow. You know, people ask us what AUCC stands for. The acronym AUCC is Al Ummah Community Center. The word Ummah is everyone, and not just certain type of people. It's all of God's creation. So we say here, as long as you believe in something bigger than yourself, and you want to do some good while you're here, then you found a home.
Thank God that I found a place.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Really there you go. There's the higher power.
Teaneck residents like Ray say these real estate events violate U.S. anti-discrimination and civil rights laws. This is exclusive footage from an event that was moved online after protests against it.
Right now, prices are have gone down slightly, but that's already even before the war because interest rates have gone up. As the war continues, I think the war is finishing up in Gaza. God willing, the North is a separate question.
Sources we spoke with said people were vetted and asked to name their rabbi and synagogue as a test for entrance. A few didn't make it in. This could be considered illegal, but the U.S. has loopholes that sometimes make exceptions for places of worship.
We have seen again and again the use of synagogues as a shield for these discriminatory events.
The other shield is powerful politicians, like Representative Gottheimer,
Hey,
who is attending
Granny,
a
welcome in.
fundraiser
Good
for
to
his
see you.
re-election campaign in the next town over. We are driving up to the site of the fundraiser this morning to see if we can ask Representative Gottheimer some questions.
Hi, Representative Gottheimer. Hi, I'm Angie from Al Jazeera. Can I ask you a few questions?
Hey guys, can you do me a favor?
Congressman, can we just ask you a few questions? Why are you allowing events that are illegal under international law to happen in this town? Congressman. Hi, good.
This is Englewood Mayor Michael Wild, who hosted the fundraiser. He's also the
The
lawyer
mayor?
for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's son.
Wow.
Can we help you?
Yeah,
Whoa,
I'm
wait,
Angie
that's
with Al Jazeera
Netanyahu's
News.
son?
Very nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you as well, but try to be a little more.
Congressman.
Whoa.
Hi, good.
This is Englewood Mayor
Oh,
Michael
son's
Wild,
attorney.
who hosted the fundraiser. He's also the lawyer for
Thank
Israeli
you.
Prime Minister Benjamin
The
Netanyahu's
lawyer.
son.
Thank you, guys.
Can we help you?
Yeah, I'm Angie with Al Jazeera News. Very nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you as well, but try to be a little more calm. I heard that there was somebody screaming at the congressman. It wasn't you, right?
I was just asking him a question. Am I up above the decibels of the sidewalk?
No, it's okay. There's no enforcement of decibels. The noise ordinance wasn't violated. Morning, Josh. How are you? Okay. I'll ask if he wants to speak.
Thank you so much.
A few minutes later, a police vehicle showed up. The congressman didn't agree to an interview or respond to our follow-up questions by email.
Shocking.
Determined to get some kind of response from officials, we decided to show up at a public meeting instead.
I came here tonight in good faith after multiple requests for an interview with Hillary Goldberg to ask questions that give her an opportunity to explain her side of the story. What are you doing to ensure the safety of Muslim, Arab, and Jewish residents who've told us you're failing to protect them?
We still haven't received a response from Hillary Goldberg or other town council members.
They're trying really hard, but we're not going to stop because nothing they can put us through here is comparable to what's going on with our brothers and sisters back over there.
The fight has just started for us, whether it's the occupation locally in Teaneck with the Zionist-run government and the occupation in Gaza.
Thanks for the alert,
is gotta
Jazzadel
end at the end of
Games.
the day.
The idea that Jews can be safe by isolating ourselves, by ethnically cleansing another community and claiming a land of our own is a fantasy. It hasn't worked, it never will work. I mean, to me, the greatest possibility for Jewish safety lies in solidarity. It lies in creating a world where we stand up for each other, where when one community is attacked, we all rally in defense of that community.
And this is where bad journalism belongs.
All right.
We want to keep moving forward, other
moving.
aspects, and we've been sort of hitting this, moving through. But the role of Iran, the role they're playing, and what we can expect next. And on that score and many others, we are very, very happy to be joined by Mazda Majidi, who's an organizer with the Answer Coalition. Mazda, as always, thanks for being with us.
Hi, Eugene. Thanks. Great to be here.
Well,
good work, by the way.
Oh, well, listen, I appreciate that, and we are very happy to have you here. One thing that we're hearing a lot, Mazda, is that the era of strategic patience in Iran has ended. And, it's a phrase I've heard a lot of different ways. And I'm curious, well, A, if you think that is even an accurate characterization of what we've been seeing here since the Iranian response to the Israeli attacks on them. But also, if you do think it's correct, what does it really mean in terms of Iran's posture in this current situation?
Well, I think when we think about the time when the U.S. under Trump assassinated General Qasem Soleimani, Iran's reaction was extremely measured, basically sending missiles, showing that they can do it, made sure that no one would get killed. And it was very limited. And in fact, the first time in April that Iran did send drones and missiles to Israel, that also was, very much calculated to minimize any real damage, just to make a statement. But I think, contrary to what we hear in the West about Iran being so aggressive and so forth, we know that Israel is the ultra-aggressive state.
I'm okay.
And I think it has reached a point where
How are you?
Iran sees that even if all of its motivation is deterrence, it has to do something. And I think what happened last Friday, the Friday prayers on October 4th in Tehran, widely unreported or underreported in the West, but it's very, very significant, showing a different level of readiness for the struggle. As you know, Friday prayers happen in Tehran and other cities all the time. Ordinarily, it's not Khamenei, the leader, who leads the Friday prayers. In fact, the last time he had done it was in 2020 after the assassination of Soleimani. But this time, what was significant about it is that several days in advance, Khamenei and others announced that it would happen in Tehran, the Friday prayers. And not only that, they announced that there would be ceremonies in commemoration of Hezbollah leader Sayyid, I'm blanking on his name, which is shameful, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. And so therefore, it was several hours of the presence of Khamenei and many top leaders in Tehran at the Friday prayers. Now, a lot of people, myself included, thought that Israel would bomb Iran at that time, send missiles, and assassinate Khamenei. And in fact, social media was full of warnings that to people, don't go. If you go, you'll get killed in an Israeli bombing. And it seemed like a credible threat. And so what happened was that Khamenei, the 85-year-old leader, is there, standing there, showing that he's not afraid of Israel. He's there for hours. He's holding a rifle in his disabled hand, indicating, willingness to continue the struggle. And over 1 million people attended. They ignored all the warnings. They took the chance of getting killed in a potential Israeli bombing. And in fact, some people showed up the night before in hopes of getting in. The vast majority of the 1 million people couldn't even make it to the inside. They were in the areas around it. And, there were significant disruptions because of the number of people attending to the metro service and bus service, and traffic was stalled and everything. But basically, this was, I think, a signal of a different period, of a period in which the Islamic Republic of Iran and the people are declaring their readiness for struggle. It wasn't a show of power per se. It was a show of willingness to struggle and sacrifice and risk lives. It was very significant. And if we have time, we can talk about at least why I think Israel didn't do the missile attack. But I think it was a very significant thing. And I think Israel and the U.S. are watching as well.
So, Mazda, there's a couple of things I want to ask you about here. And this is a conversation I think a lot of people are having. I know we're talking about the strategic patience and how perhaps the...
So I actually just made the link tree and it doesn't have everything. If you're looking for more content, you want all my links.
The hesitancy to respond to Israel has resulted in Netanyahu feeling emboldened. I mean, we've seen that pattern. Some have said that this actually, one of the mistakes that was made earlier this year was Hezbollah not responding strongly enough to Israel targeting the southern suburb of Beirut back in January to kill Hamas leader Salah el-Aruri. Their response was, I think, to fire some missiles into northern Israeli military installations, and then to call it a day. And from then on, it became clearer and clearer to Israel that every time they crossed something that had been called a red line by the resistance axis, they weren't actually going to get the response that was promised. And I think Iran is maybe coming to that conclusion now. So I am curious if you think that's where the thinking might be at in terms of this is a lunatic country that is run by a Nazi-like figure at this point who will keep expanding, who will keep retaliating, who will keep making this a bigger war until he is deterred. And the only way to reestablish deterrence is to strike back. And that can't just be symbolic gestures and waiting till the time and place of our choosing, right? That's one. And I guess where I'm leading to with that is this making, do you think the Iranian leadership reconsider their ideas around having nuclear weapons? Because we know that having nuclear weapons does act, in fact, as a deterrence. And for a long time, Iran has said, no, we won't have nuclear weapons. There's a fatwa against creating nuclear weapons. And now there are a lot of, there is a debate inside Iran that's become quite a public one about whether that's wise to continue on that path, given everything that's happened.
Rania, there's a lot to talk about there. One thing that I think that's very important for us who are in solidarity with the Palestinian people to realize is, as much as we would like to have a tit for tat between Hezbollah or Ansarullah or Hamas and Israel, the forces are asymmetrical. Israel is one of the most, militaristic states in the world. It is supplied by the U.S. It is provided funding by the U.S. So it's not even just Israel. And so the problem is when you're fighting an enemy courageously and taking chances against an enemy that is far better armed and far stronger, your options are kind of limited. And as much as many of us would like to see tit for tat between Iran and Israel or Hezbollah and Israel, a lot of times that's not the reality on the ground. I think what has happened, and it's very significant, and even in the region, we couldn't say that 5 years ago, certainly not 10, 15 years ago, is that Iran now has the capability to inflict some damage on Israel. And that is very significant. But that's not to say that Iran has the equivalent military force to Israel. And then the other thing, which I believe all the forces of the axis of resistance are very conscious of, is the fact that Netanyahu in particular and the Israeli ruling class broadly have wanted for decades to make this a regional conflict because they want to pull the U.S. in. And this was true when Bush II was president and during Obama and Trump and so forth. Israel desperately wants to get the U.S. to invade Iran and occupy Iran. And of course, as you're dealing with forces that have far bigger military might than you do, you have to play your cards carefully. So yes, Rania, I do agree that Iran has reached a point of deciding that just exercising patience and self-restraint is not going to work. I know that many people were critical after Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated in Tehran, while Tehran kept saying that we are going to punish Israel, we are going to respond, but they hadn't done that till October 1st. But if you're part of the Iranian leadership, on the one hand, you want to show support and solidarity with the Palestinian resistance and the resistance to Zionism and imperialism in the region in general. But at the same time, you want to go only as far as to not make it inevitable for the U.S. to start bombing or possibly invading and occupying. So it is very difficult. And as much as those on the progressive side want to see Israel punished and the settler colonial state of Israel defeated, we also have to look at the real balance of forces, which, by the way, is moving in the direction of changing, because I think it is realistic to think that Israel is getting gradually weakened. That's not something that we're going to see Israel collapse tomorrow. But there are many signs that Israel is suffering consequences beyond the military consequences of the ongoing war.
Well, Mazda, I'm glad you raised the relationship of forces, because it seems the other aspect of what Iran is doing, and this goes back to President Raisi, is, very aggressively pushing the diplomatic course with various other Arab countries, particularly the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. We have, the president of Iran meeting with the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia. You've got the Iranian foreign minister meeting with Mohammed bin Salman and a number of top officials. You had the interesting sequence of events, I thought, that as soon as it seemed like Biden was like, okay, with the oil and gas bombing by Israel, the GCC comes out and says, we're totally neutral and we'll never allow them to use our territory to attack Iran, because obviously they don't want to lose their own oil and gas. But it seems that Iranian diplomacy has also taken a big step forward here in the last year, because they are trying to play on these contradictions that even these pro-U.S. entities like the Saudi Arabias of the world have their own self-interest that Iran is appealing to.
That's a major change, and
Lesbian Hot Sauce raided your
that's
channel
one
with
of the,
14
things that's
viewers.
so mind-boggling is,
Yay! Lesbian hot sauce,
the
my
fuck?
favorite.
Basically, that's why it feels like so much of a psyop.
Who doesn't love
because
some lesbian hot sauce? You know you want it.
Putin
Go ahead
has
and
now
follow.
conceded, right?
Check her out.
And said,
She's
okay,
amazing.
Prigozhin, who people love.
Absolutely incredible streamer. Please, if you're not following Lesbian Hot Sauce, I recommend you do. She is a wonderful, strong leftist, comrade, kind, funny, amazing streamer who covers all sorts of topics that, impact marginalized people all over the world. So definitely highly recommend. All right, welcome in, Raiders. How are you doing? How was the stream? I hope it was amazing. I'm Adrian Vixen. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a non-binary, queer, autistic, disabled variety streamer, and I cover leftist news and politics and shit that I find interesting. Talking about Iran, Israel wanting US and Iran hot war, which is like escalating, and I've been trying not to dissociate, so we're doing good. Yes, Lesbian Hot Sauce is a spicy lesbian. You will not be disappointed. The name lives up.
I know all of us, the gut-wrenching scenes of Israeli genocide in Gaza makes it even difficult to follow the news. But if you think of the period prior to October 7, 2023, in fact, weeks before it, in September 23, Mohammed bin Salman was making statements saying it's only a matter of weeks, not even months, weeks, before we reach a diplomatic agreement with Israel. And these are states, including very specifically Saudi Arabia and the person of bin Salman, who were effectively for years and years lobbying the US to invade and bomb Iran. I mean, these countries were begging the US to do something about Iran. And now, as a result of the change in the balance of forces and as a result of the resistance of the Palestinians and the supporters across the Arab world, now we're seeing this, Eugene. And that's very significant that one reactionary monarchy in the Persian Gulf after another is making statements. Even Jordan is making a statement. No, we're not going to take part in any attacks on Iran. We're not going to let our soils be used. Now, of course, the U.S. has military bases on the soils of these countries, and it's not going to ask for any permission from them, which is another colonial aspect of U.S. military bases around the world. But the fact that this posturing has, from the point of essentially lobbying for the U.S. to invade Iran, to saying, no, we're neutral and we're not going to take part and we're not going to let our soil or airspace be used for attacking Iran, is an indication of how far things have moved as a result of resistance, despite the fact that resistance has given significant casualties, has given severe cost. But things are not the same in the region as they were a year before.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, go ahead.
No, I'm good. I'm just, I just like don't know what else to say anymore. Sorry, you guys. This is just me also being, no, listen, I mean, it's like, it's really hard to watch Lebanon just be destroyed. It's like I'm watching in real time, and it's horrible because, you know, we watched it happen to Gaza for a year. And so everything we're seeing, like we've already seen the script before, you know, like we know when Israel and the US say A, what's about to happen next. And it somehow makes it even more torturous in a way to know that like when you hear A, B, and C from these imperialists, from these Zionists, it's like you see the writing on the wall, you know what's about to happen next. And, you know, I think that's the fear of the entire resistance axis. That's what they've been trying to do all year, is to manage this, to pressure Israel to stop while preventing it from spreading. And it's just scary because it just keeps spreading. And it's like, there's no knowing when that stops. That's it. Yeah. That's all I want to say to the end of this conversation.
Rania, let me just add this, and it's as painful as it is. I mean, we have to recognize, as much as in the West we hear all the BS about proxy forces and Iran stooges and so forth. I mean, what we are witnessing is a significant level of sacrifice, of solidarity on the part of the people of Lebanon and around the world. I mean, Hezbollah had no direct interest in getting into a confrontation with Israel. I mean, there was nothing happening at that border. It was completely in solidarity on the part of the Lebanese people and the axis of resistance for Hezbollah to start sending rockets and missiles into northern Israel, or as far into Israel as it could. So, and we're seeing the same thing even in Iraq. We're seeing support in Iran, and we're seeing it, of course, even in Yemen. I think there's something to be said about that. And that is that when Israel started its recent round of genocide in Gaza, it is no longer true that the world stood by quietly. And in fact, a number of people stood up, showed solidarity, and they're paying the price for it. Also, I want to say there's a possibility, I don't want to make predictions, but across the Arab world, there's unrest. We know that in Egypt, we know that in Jordan. And so another unknown in this equation as the conflict continues is how much these right-wing governments of Arab states are going to be pressured or potentially even destabilized as a result of their own people wanting to rise up and show solidarity with Palestinians. So as painful as it is to watch these developments, there's positives in terms of solidarity and struggle as well.
No, certainly. The solidarity is important. And I'll also add to what you said. I actually do think Hezbollah may have had, an interest in involving itself in the sense of, one thing Hassan Nasrallah said in his first speech after October 7th was, yes, we're doing this to support Gaza, but also there's the whole issue of, if Gaza is destroyed, Lebanon is next. And that wasn't wrong, actually, because now Lebanon is next. And I think that's what we see. This is why Israel's so difficult to deal with, because there are no red lines anymore. And it's like something is always next. They haven't achieved their military objectives. And so they deal with that by expanding their war aims and destroying more. And we know ultimately that will weaken Israel. But man, in the process, how much is going to be destroyed? And that it's so unnecessary and completely preventable, but we have this international community that just sits on its hands, too cowardly to stand up to the Americans. And understandably so in a way, because, when you see what they do to Gaza, that's scary. You don't want that done to you. And the only forces that are willing to, put anything on the line are the weakest parts of the world the Yemenis, poorest country in the region. And look what they're willing to sacrifice, the Iraqis, the Iranians at this point, So it is interesting to see where everyone has fallen in the midst of a live streamed Holocaust. And I think one day when this is looked back on and written about, that will certainly be at the forefront of the history books.
Yeah, well, as Frederick Douglass said, without struggle, there is no progress. And he said that 3 years before the Civil War, so it gives you a sense of the context. Mazda Majidi with the Answer Coalition, as always, a pleasure to have you with us here in the Freedom Side. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. It was great to be here.
Yeah, without struggle, there is no progress. Let's go.
This is
Shout out to
Yosef
Struggle
calling from
Forward.
Israel.
Yosef from Israel, are you on speaker or are Bluetooth?
Not anymore.
Okay, great. We can hear you more clearly now. What's on your mind?
Fantastic, yeah. Last time I called in was about a year ago. I'm an anti-occupation Israeli, but I still kind of believe in the two-state solution, so I was hoping maybe you can try to convince me otherwise.
Sure. First of all, Yosef, amazing. Thank you for being an anti-occupation Israeli. I know that there's a lot of forces within Israel that aren't on that side, and it must be a very difficult time for you. So thank you for calling in. I believe in a one-state, multiracial democracy within the Middle East. I believe that the 1967 borders is the second best option, but given the level of settlement activity in the West Bank and the Trump administration allowing for Israel to annex the Golan Heights, which the Biden administration didn't reverse, I don't know how that's possible. I think when we're talking about the Nakba, and I'm sure as an anti-occupation Israeli, you understand what that meant for people. It's not just for only Israelis to have the land that is in proper Israel all along the sea, in terms of trade prospects, in terms of people's homelands. I believe that it's the best case scenario, like it was in South Africa, for the wall to drop and for there to be racial integration within Greater Israel, which is basically how I would refer to the West Bank and Gaza, because they're under Israeli control. They just don't have rights.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would like to definitely see some kind of, some people call it the Federation movement, and most people in the anti-occupation bloc are a one-state equality solution. I mean, I would like any scenario to have equality amongst people, but like at the same time, it's not for me as an Israeli to say that Palestinians necessarily have to live with us in one state. I mean, along with that, I've read, Herzl's vision for a land which is, 120 years old. Part of his writing was that there shouldn't be any kind of, everything should be done with the native population, not against it. Because it was, point of his movement was to end anti-Semitism, and you're not going to end anti-Semitism by
lesbian
antagonizing populations. So,
right. In terms of in terms of ending hatred, that's also what I think is the most effective solution. Like, you see this in anthropological studies or like sociological studies about when people live side by side, but also. The thing is that there's already 2 million Palestinians that live on, Palestinian Israelis, right?
Sure.
That live within Israel. And as you know, they are second-class citizens. Expanding the citizenship.
Well, I mean, not in a legal way, second class, but in a practical kind of how society treats them kind of way.
Right. I mean, for example, you as a Jewish Israeli, I don't know if you're in Israel now, but with those rocket attacks from Iran, you have a place to go, right? You have a shelter?
No, I'm actually in the Haifa area. A lot of my neighborhood doesn't have shelters.
Oh, wow, you're in Haifa. That's a very, are you in Haifa right now?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's been a crazy few weeks here. It's my first time living in this kind of condition here.
Yeah.
But I mean, it definitely informs perspective on both, why Israelis are traumatized in a way, and will obviously extrapolate what people in Gaza and Lebanon, without all of the defenses, have to live with.
For people that don't realize, Haifa is in the very north of Israel, so you are quite close to the fighting between Hezbollah.
20 miles from the Lebanon border. So we've been getting regular rockets attacks here for the past 2 weeks. They've been only getting more intense. Part of the reason I'm anti-war and occupation is because I'd like to be secure living here.
Right.
And, our actions are, we could probably have a ceasefire deal. I know Hezbollah is looking for one now, but I don't think that's going to happen with our government.
Yeah, so what's your assessment of how Israelis are feeling? I know you're in Haifa, so it's perhaps a little different, but about Netanyahu in particular, because I know his poll numbers have gone up.
They're definitely scared. Look, as opposed to the judicial reforms, the anti-war protests now do have, as a Israelite, there is a lot, there's clear people are definitely enjoying the war and the occupation, which you didn't see during the judicial reforms. So, I was very happy to see that in terms of at least people are openly walking around saying we need to end the occupation, we need a ceasefire, and, but, we can protest all we want, the government, is not going to do anything, and there's not going to be elections until 2026, most likely.
And that's the thing about the democracy stuff. Frankly,
Sure.
even with the Israeli people, I think people are a little bit fooled by some of the visuals from Tel Aviv in terms of protests, right? The more liberal Israelis are in the cities as opposed to the folks in settlements and the more extremists who also are a part of the population, but maybe not, they're not going to be in the hostage protests that you see. But could you just give people a sense of when you talk to other Israelis, do Palestinians really come up that much? What's your sense of how people feel about the current war aims of the government? It's hard to assess from the outside.
A lot of people think that the ultra-Orthodox people I've spoken to think that this is a political war. It's pretty clear for, I think, most of the citizens. In regards to the Palestinian issue, it seems like a very emotional response, at least up here the past few weeks, because people are under threat. And, when I talk to people, it's like, well, how do you think it feels to be on the other side? Very basic peacemaking work, but that is definitely an issue, but it's very emotionally charged. It's hard to tell people when they're dealing with alarms and taking their kids to bomb shelters, to think about somebody else. That's part of what we do as political junkies and people who are trying to change things. But I definitely see how the situation has evolved to what it is, being in these circumstances.
Yeah, downward spiral. It's reinforcing itself. It's horrible.
Lastly,
it almost seems like, that from our government, this is almost intentional. You want to put 60% of the country in bomb shelters and on alert, because that's going to radicalize them and make people more right-wing, I think, by nature.
100%. What is the appetite for long-term war within Israel?
It's very, especially here in Haifa now, the past 2 weeks, it's been, almost like COVID-like, where things are quiet in the streets, things are shut down. I don't think anyone thinks this is sustainable, but a lot of people are just kind of going on with their lives, trying to figure things out, because they don't think there's really a helplessness feel. But
right.
That's only what I could pick up from.
And no one's saying the word genocide in Israel as it relates to Palestinians, pretty much, right?
The crew that, the anti-occupation crew kind of does, but, most mainstream Israelis won't go that far. And even if they do, we have to do it.
Right.
But,
right.
Well,
I appreciate you calling in and listening, even though I'm sure some of our anger about the situation or rhetoric is a little hard to hear. appreciate your activism as an anti-occupation Israeli,
Absolutely.
and thanks so much for calling in today.
Thank you. Yeah, just trying to keep an open mind.
That's all we ask. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can imagine a future where just regular people could go in like over a weekend from Beirut to Tel Aviv to Gaza and it'd be fine and not a militarized border situation.
Like in Europe.
Yeah.
Like you're in the south of France and you want to go to see a German city for the day. Just bring your passport and get on a train. Like, these are the kinds of things where when you don't have militarized borders in this way, it solves a lot.
Yeah,
it solves a lot.
Like that's why fundamentally, like, you know, if there's an intervening two-state stage, I would only frankly buy it if the Israelis, like Bibi and etc., were extremely against it. Would I buy the sincerity of a two-state? But they could only be an intervening stage toward a one democracy, or maybe even a regional democracy for everybody in the Arab Peninsula.
Doesn't just need to be these carved up countries created by imperial
of years ago by imperialists. Exactly.
Yeah.
Where we have things like one person, one vote, and that sort of thing, and not militarized borders. That'd be, I think, a better future for everybody.
Golden Oyster Cult. Somebody please clip Emma saying we need proof of said cucking for the soundboard. Maybe that's more RM Brown's bag.
Yeah, let's go.
Industrial military. Hey, just wanted to say I really like this variation of MR with Matt's increased input and you, Emma, as co-host. I appreciate both of your thoughts and representation of slightly different parts of the left. That's very nice. Thank you. Fantastic Moron. Pro tip, if you are donating supplies for disaster relief in decimated areas, spend your money on bulk items over random items. Instead of a few cans, a couple bottles of water, and some crackers, buy cases of one item. Relief workers have to sort through each item, and that takes precious time away from other tasks. With bulk, it's easy to organize and creates recovery speed and aids deliveries. Thank you. Left is best. That's a great tip. I appreciate that. Fantastic Moron.
Hey folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily...
Moron, what? What a weird way to cut that off. Alright, up next from Dimitri Lascaris.
Good afternoon, this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Beirut, Lebanon on October 12, 2024. I'm currently situated in the central part of the city of Beirut in a district known as Bashura. And the reason why we come here today is that a week ago, a medical facility in this neighborhood was struck by the Israeli military. That medical facility is right across the street in this building. It was on the second
Hydration is
floor.
Important.
As you can see, that has
can't
been
have the chat be too
wrecked by
thirsty
the
now, can
strike. In addition, the levels above were occupied by civilians. These are private residences. A number of them have been damaged. And in fact, it does appear as though the entire building, at least at the level of the second floor, has suffered structural damage that could very well affect the overall stability of the structure. This is a densely populated residential neighborhood. The Israelis gave no justification, not even a semblance of a justification for striking this medical facility. The strike killed 7 workers of the facility, including 2 medics. As you can see behind me, this is an ambulance that belonged to the facility. This is a parking space for the ambulance. It was clearly marked, publicly known to be a healthcare facility. And at the very same time that Israel struck this structure, it also struck medical facilities in the south of Lebanon, killing healthcare workers there as well. This is part of a broader pattern, the systematic degradation of Lebanon's healthcare system that's been going on since the genocide began in Gaza last year. I've reported previously, as have others from the south of Lebanon, on the killing of medics in the months leading up to the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, the attacks on medical facilities. In fact, I and my colleagues were at a hospital in Bin Jabal a few months ago, hours after it was struck by an Israeli drone, killing 3 people, civilians who were exiting the hospital's emergency ward. Just 2 days ago, the UN Commission of Inquiry accused Israel of committing crimes against humanity in particular the crime of extermination by destroying the healthcare system of Gaza, a process which continues to this very day. And if Israel continues to enjoy complete impunity for the destruction of the healthcare system of Gaza, there is a real risk that Lebanon will suffer the same fate, to the profound detriment and suffering of the Lebanese people. That's why it's all the more imperative that Israel be held accountable for its war crimes and crimes against humanity. Before this process of destroying healthcare systems in the region expands outward to other areas of West Asia. It's also notable that the explosion caused shrapnel to emanate outward, and here's one of the numerous pockmarks resulting from the shrapnel. I don't believe that any pedestrians in the area were killed or injured by the shrapnel, although 20 people who lived above this second floor were injured by the strike. But it just goes to show how deadly these types of strikes are, especially when they occur within a densely populated residential area. And lastly, I want to note that just down here, about 500 meters beyond the trees, you can't see it because of the greenage, is the residence of the Lebanese Prime Minister, and a little bit beyond that is the Lebanese Parliament. And clearly the proximity of these state institutions did not in any way, shape, or form deter Israel from attacking this civilian infrastructure. Why all of this happened? Well, let me speculate for a moment. On the day prior to this deadly attack, Israel suffered one of its worst days militarily, where fighters of the Islamic resistance killed 8 Israeli soldiers who tried to infiltrate into the territory
Welcome in,
of Lebanon.
Nightingale. Hope you're doing well.
Now, whether or not this was retaliation for that, who knows? But it is certainly noteworthy that Israel hasn't even attempted to justify its attack on this medical facility.
Oh, now they're adding light.
Good evening, Ali. Thank you for joining me today.
Nice to meet you.
And could you tell me your full name and what you do for a living?
I'm Ali Azbek. I'm civil engineer working at Vardani zone near Saida. I live in Beirut in Hadas area. I left my home because the Zionist enemy attacking my area.
Where's your home? What part of Lebanon is your home?
Laylaki الضاحية جنوبية.
In Dahya.
Dahya, صح.
Right. And so we're standing in front of a destroyed building. What is this place, and how was it destroyed?
This place is a residential building containing a group of people that left their homes and go to this area as a safe area. But the Zionist enemy make a massacre in this area.
And when did that happen?
Hmm?
When?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. And I understand you were here, you were close by when it happened. Where were you when this building was destroyed?
Distance about 50 meters only.
And what were you doing?
We are in our new home in Basta, near this area.
This is called Basta, this area?
Called Basta, yes,
okay.
yes.
Sorry, so go ahead. So, and what happened when you heard the explosion? What did you do?
I rushed to this area and I see this crime in this area. About 18 martyrs and
welcome in.
About 100 wounded in this area.
Did you when you came here after the explosion, did you see some of the people who were killed and wounded?
Yes.
And you didn't see any military?
No military. It's a residential building. No military operation in this area at all. At all.
Wow.
And I understand you also were very close to another attack that happened in Saida.
At Wardaniya, I rushed to the area of the bomb, and this cultural association that was attacked by the Zionist enemy. Also, he targeted a residential area, a residential building that contain about 20 civilians. 6 of these civilians dead, and about 27 wounded.
And there, did you see some of the dead and wounded yourself as well? Did you see some of the victims?
Yes, I worked with the municipality there, and by my hand,
you helped.
I help this wounded people, and with my hand, I see the martyrs there.
Yeah, you were trying to get them out with your hands.
Yes.
I see. And so now, are you going to stay in Beirut despite all of the destruction? Are you going to stay in this area?
Yes. We are staying here.
And remember,
till the end
hydrate
of this,
or die.
war.
Well, thank you very much for speaking with me, Ali.
I gave them Golan Heights. I gave them the Abraham Accords. I recognized the capital of Israel and opened the embassy in Jerusalem. Gave them billions and billions of dollars. I was the best friend Israel ever had.
Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel.
He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
I think that it is, without any question, our imperative to do what we can to allow Israel to defend itself.
The answer should have been hit the nuclear first and worry about the rest later.
The expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States.
The expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States.
It is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys.
I have my entire career and life supported Israel.
I've often said, Mr. President, if there were not an Israel, we'd have to invent one.
She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now.
But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself.
Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. People were afraid of stepping out of line.
For people to fear the United States.
Long said, if Israel didn't exist, we'd have to invent it.
And we will deport the foreign jihad sympathizers and Hamas supporters from our midst. We will get them out. If you hate America, if you want to eliminate Israel, we will throw you out of our country so rapidly your head will spin.
The United States and Israel are waging war across the Middle East. They have both been attacking about half of the countries in the region. Israel has been brutally bombing Gaza and the occupied West Bank, which is Palestinian territory, for a year using U.S. weapons. Israel has also been attacking Iran, Syria, and Yemen. Likewise, the United States has repeatedly launched airstrikes against Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. And of course, the U.S. is supporting Israel as it has attacked Iran and Palestine. Now, what's important to stress about these wars is how completely bipartisan they are in Washington. The leaders of both the Democratic and Republican parties have openly expressed support for these U.S.-Israeli wars and have called for providing more and more weapons to Israel to help it carry out more war crimes and crimes against humanity. because that's what Israel has been officially accused of by the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice, which are investigating Israel and Israeli officials on charges of crimes against humanity and even genocide. Today, I'm going to be looking at some of the statements made by top U.S. officials expressing staunch support for Israel, and I'll also be fact-checking them and showing how wrong some of them are. And I'm going to be looking at statements made by Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and Kamala Harris, and also their running mates, J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. But before I show clips from them, I want to briefly provide some more context. That's very important. The International Court of Justice, which is the top United Nations legal authority, issued a ruling in January saying very clearly that Israel can be investigated on charges of genocide in a case that was introduced by South Africa, which of course was a victim of apartheid, just like the people of Palestine are victims of apartheid today. And Israel blatantly violated this ruling made by The Hague, and even mainstream human rights organizations in the West have said that Israel is violating its obligations under the Genocide Convention. Top experts at the United Nations have said very clearly that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people, and these UN legal experts called for an arms embargo on Israel. However, the US government has been blatantly defying these legal experts, and the US government, the Biden administration, has continued sending billions and billions of dollars of weapons and ammunition and other military aid to Israel. In just 1 year, the Biden administration sent more than $18 billion of military assistance to Israel. And Israel has constantly, on a daily basis, used those US weapons to bomb civilian areas, killing tens of thousands of civilians. For instance, this October 2024, Israel bombed a mosque and school that were being used in Gaza to house civilians who lost their homes because Israel bombed and destroyed their homes. Dozens of Palestinians were killed in this attack, and even CNN admitted in a report that a US bomb was used by Israel in order to massacre these Palestinian civilians who were in a shelter. And there are literally thousands more Israeli attacks like this on civilian areas in Gaza, which are intentional. In fact, journalists at Dropsite News, which was founded by veterans of The Intercept, they published an incredible report citing Israeli officials who revealed that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has sat in on meetings with top Israeli officials and has given a green light to attack civilian targets in Gaza, including the U.S. Secretary of State told Israeli officials that they can bomb humanitarian aid trucks intentionally, on purpose. This is not an accident. This is Israeli regime policy backed by the United States, giving them the green light. And this is why the civilian death toll in Gaza has been so extremely high. In fact, in October 2024, 99 American doctors, surgeons, and medical professionals who have served in Gaza treating civilians in the past year, they published an open letter to U.S. President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. And in this letter, they estimated that the death toll in Gaza in the first year of this brutal U.S.-backed Israeli bombing is greater than 118,000 Palestinians killed out of a population of roughly 2 million. They estimate that about 5% of Gaza's population has been exterminated by Israel in this U.S.-backed genocide. And this was also the conclusion that scientific experts came to in a peer-reviewed article that they published in the leading scientific journal, The Lancet. They noted that in previous wars, there were roughly 4 indirect deaths for every death. That is, the people who are directly killed by bombing are a small minority of the overall casualties. A lot of other people die because of disease, because of hunger, because of no medical attention, because the hospitals have been bombed and destroyed by Israel using U.S. bombs. So given this previous record, and given the death toll as of July, when this article was published, they estimated that in Gaza, in a conservative estimate, 186,000 Palestinians would die, and that was roughly 8% of Gaza's population. But that conservative estimate was based at the time on the current official death toll from the Gaza Health Ministry of around 38,000 deaths. Since then, that number has increased by several thousand. So if you did the same calculation, including indirect deaths, it's very likely that more than 200,000 Gazans will lose their lives in this genocide, which is more than 10% of the entire population of the Gaza Strip. And by the way, I should point out, because some pro-Israel propagandists sometimes claim that the Gaza Health Ministry's death toll figures cannot be trusted, but in reality, the Israeli intelligence agencies themselves use the Gazan Health Ministry's figures because they know that historically they have been accurate. The United Nations also uses the Gaza Health Ministry figures. They have a long history in previous wars of not only being accurate, but actually of being conservative, being an undercount of the total number of Palestinians killed by Israel in these previous horrific wars on Gaza. This is why in May, the International Criminal Court at The Hague officially applied for arrest warrants against Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. The ICC officially accused them of crimes against humanity, starvation of civilians as a war crime, and extermination of the Palestinian people. However, those arrest warrants were not officially issued because of threats and blackmail and pressure by Western governments, including by the US government, which ironically is not even a member of the International Criminal Court. But top US officials from both the Democratic and Republican parties have threatened the ICC and ICC staff, and even the US has threatened family members of ICC prosecutors and attorneys. So this is what the West calls its rules-based order, threatening international legal institutions to make sure that Israeli officials are not held accountable for carrying out genocide and crimes against humanity with the full support of the United States and most Western governments. And in fact, instead of stopping Israel's genocide in Palestine, the US and Western governments have strongly supported Israel as it has expanded its war across the region, invading Lebanon and also bombing Syria, Yemen, and Iran. And what are Israel's goals? Well, it's very obvious. Colonialism, territorial expansion, colonizing the land of its neighbors. Far-right Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made this quite clear when he gave a speech at the United Nations, and he brought out a map in which he threatened Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Yemen. And on this map, he completely erased Palestine. His map shows the occupied West Bank and Gaza as part of so-called Israel, making it clear that he wants to simply ethnically cleanse, expel all Palestinians, and now he's invading Lebanon as well and trying to colonize the southern part of Lebanon. A top Israeli cabinet member, the Minister of Diaspora Affairs, Amichai Chikli, said very clearly in a tweet that Israel does not recognize the sovereignty of Lebanon, Iraq, and Syria. So he said they're fake countries. So Israel wants to colonize their land. He cited the 100-year-old colonialist Sykes-Picot Agreement, in which the British and French empires carved up the region, so making it very clear that Israel is following the same colonial path as the European colonial powers. And he said that Israel must redraw the borders of Lebanon and colonize the southern part of Lebanon, which is exactly what Israel tried to do when it invaded Lebanon in 1982 and maintained a military occupation of Lebanon until 2000, trying to colonize the southern part of Lebanon, which is why Hezbollah exists in the first place. It was created as part of the Lebanese resistance against Israel's illegal invasion and occupation. And Hezbollah successfully expelled Israel in 2000, although Israel has continued attacking again and again, invading Lebanon again in 2006, and now invading Lebanon once more in 2024 as part of this attempt to colonize Lebanon. And then another Israeli cabinet member, the far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich, he also admitted that Israel has colonial goals that are completely unrealistic. They're never going to happen. So he's essentially saying that Israel is going to constantly wage war against its neighbors. He said that Israel's goal is, first of all, regime change in Iran. He said, we will continue waging war until we topple the regime in Iran. So, I mean, this is incredible. Israel is openly calling for overthrowing the Iranian government. And then he also said that Israel will keep waging war until there is no Hamas in Gaza. Hamas is a political party and also an armed movement, but it's a political party that governs Gaza. There was an election in Gaza. They won. They're the government of Gaza. So he's saying that Israel will keep waging war on Hamas until it no longer exists, which is never going to happen. I mean, they're the government of Gaza, and the more that Israel kills family members of Hamas fighters, the more that they recruit future fighters. This is never going to end until they eliminate every single Palestinian, which we know is what some of these far-right fascist extremists in Israel want. And then he also says, this is the real goal. He says that Israel's goal is to resume settlement in the Gaza Strip, to have permanent Israeli colonies. So to colonize Gaza, just like Israel has colonized the occupied Palestinian West Bank, carving it up and creating more and more little colonies, which you can say is the Lebensraum. I mean, this is the same kind of fascist ideology that is motivating Israel to colonize all of the land of indigenous Palestinians. And then he also says to drive Hezbollah away, which again, Hezbollah is a political party in Lebanon. It is not only an armed movement. There's a political party called Hezbollah that has a dozen members of parliament in Lebanon's democratically elected legislature. And Hezbollah only exists because of Israel's illegal occupation and invasion and occupation of Lebanon in the 1980s. So the more that Israel brutally bombs Lebanon and kills civilians and women and children, the more it's actually recruiting future fighters for Hezbollah. And Israel absurdly claims that it's acting in self-defense, but in the past year of cross-border attacks between Israel and Lebanon, Israel was responsible for the vast, vast majority of attacks. Over 3/4 of the attacks were carried out by Israel against Lebanon. But what's so incredibly cynical about all of this is that the US government, the Biden-Harris administration, is sending billions of dollars of support to Israel and strongly supporting it as it's bombing civilian areas, densely populated cities in Lebanon. But then Kamala Harris goes on Twitter and says, we support the people of Lebanon. We're sending them $157 million in humanitarian assistance for food, shelter, water, protection, and sanitation after the U.S. sent Israel billions of dollars of bombs to destroy the food, shelter, water, protection, and sanitation of people in Lebanon. They wouldn't need humanitarian aid if the Biden-Harris administration were not sending Israel all of the bombs it's using to bomb them in Lebanon with U.S. support, and then protecting Israel at the United Nations Security Council, vetoing any resolution that calls for peace or a ceasefire. In fact, while Israel has killed thousands of people in Lebanon, many civilians, many women and children, while Israel is doing that, the U.S. is actively sending Israel more and more bombs and missiles and ammunition. And the news outlet Politico reported that top officials in the Biden-Harris administration encouraged Israel to invade Lebanon. Not only are they supporting it, they told Netanyahu, do it. You have our support. We give you the green light. Invade Lebanon. And throughout this time, Israel has also been carrying out attacks on Iran. And in April, Israel bombed Iran's consulate in Syria, which was an act of war against Iran on Iranian territory. And then in July, Israel carried out an attack inside the Iranian capital, Tehran, assassinating the Hamas leader, Ismail Haniyeh, in Tehran, an act of war against Iran. And then in September, Israel assassinated a top Iranian general in the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard Corps. And in response, Iran carried out an act of self-defense, a response to Israel, launching around 180 missiles at Israel. And Kamala Harris, who's now running for president, was asked about this in an interview.
Content.
She erased all of that context of Israel repeatedly attacking Iran in Iranian territory. And instead, she said, Israel must defend itself. And she said, we will always defend Israel against Iran.
The aid that we have given Israel allowed Israel to defend itself against 200 ballistic missiles that were just meant to attack the Israelis and the people of Israel. And when we think about the threat that Hamas, Hezbollah presents, Iran, I think that it is without any question our imperative to do what we can to allow Israel to defend itself against those kinds of attacks.
Now, what's also hilarious about this is in the same interview, Kamala Harris was asked why Israel's far-right Prime Minister Netanyahu has refused to bring about peace or a ceasefire, despite the Biden administration claiming that supposedly it wants one. In reality, the Biden-Harris administration has not done anything to actually push for peace and a ceasefire. They have encouraged Israel to keep expanding these colonial wars with U.S. weapons and U.S. support, sending more and more troops, thousands more U.S. troops to the region to support Israel. So in response, Kamala Harris showed how she's the expert in saying a lot of words that mean absolutely nothing. Listen to this incredible clip of Kamala, and you can hear that she just is spouting nonsense without actually saying anything.
The work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
Now that clip is so ridiculous. I actually want to read a transcript of what Kamala Harris said here when she was asked why Netanyahu is not actually pursuing peace. She said, quote, "The work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or results of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region," end quote. So if you translate this gobbledygook, what you get is that she's saying that we told Israel to do things and those things happened, I guess. I mean, it's complete nonsense. And it shows how Kamala Harris is not actually interested in peace or ceasefire, just like how her boss, Joe Biden, has done everything he can to support Israel, not just as president, but for decades. Going back to the 1980s, Joe Biden has constantly said that the U.S. empire will always support Israel because Israel is an unsinkable aircraft carrier for the U.S., as former U.S. Secretary of State Alexander Haig famously said. And Biden said, we must constantly support Israel, and if Israel did not exist, we would have to create it to support our interests in the region.
Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel.
I've often said, Mr. President, if there were not an Israel, we'd have to invent one. I've long said, if Israel didn't exist, we'd have to invent it.
And today, Biden is encouraging Israel to launch more attacks on Iran, especially targeting Iran's oil facilities, which, by the way, is a civilian target. So the U.S. and Israel are encouraging attacks on Iranian civilian targets. But this is bipartisan. It's not just Kamala Harris and Joe Biden who strongly support Israel as it's carrying out wars of aggression against many of its neighbors. In fact, Donald Trump has even more aggressively called for Israel to attack Iran and other countries in the region. And in a presidential rally, Trump called for Israel to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities.
I listened to Biden yesterday. You know, they asked him, what do you think about Iran? Would you hit Iran? And he goes, as long as they don't hit the nuclear stuff. That's the thing you want to hit, right? I said, I think he's got that one wrong. Isn't that what you're supposed to hit? I mean, it's the biggest risk we have. Nuclear weapons, the power of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. You know, I rebuilt the entire military, jets, everything. I built it, including nuclear, and I hated to build the nuclear, but I got to know firsthand the power of that stuff, and I'll tell you what, we have to be totally prepared. We have to be absolutely prepared. But when they asked him that question, the answer should have been hit the nuclear first and worry about the rest later. And that's where they should.
In fact, Donald Trump is so extremely pro-Israel that he thinks calling someone a Palestinian is an insult. In the presidential debate that was held back when Biden was still a candidate between Biden and Trump, Trump said that Israel should finish the job in Gaza, which is calling for it to finish the genocide. I mean, this is incredible genocidal rhetoric, considering that, again, Israel is being investigated by the International Court of Justice on charges of genocide and is facing accusations of crimes against humanity by the International Criminal Court. Well, Trump says Israel should finish the job, and then Trump called Joe Biden a Palestinian as an insult. And look at Biden's face in response to this. You can see that he's actually insulted and disgusted by what Trump's calling him. So it shows how bipartisan this racism is toward Palestinians and this dehumanization is of Palestinians.
As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one who wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
The discourse was basically the same in the presidential debate between Trump and Kamala Harris. The candidates basically fought to see who can be more pro-Israel. And Kamala Harris said, I have always supported Israel, and I support attacking Iran and its so-called proxies, when in reality, Hamas is not an Iranian proxy. Hamas is a Palestinian group. It's gotten support from Iran, but they're completely independent. In fact, Iran and Hamas disagreed on Syria. They were on opposite sides, which obviously means that it's not a proxy. And Hezbollah, likewise, is not an Iranian proxy, in scare quotes. Hezbollah has its origins in the Lebanese indigenous resistance against Israel's illegal invasion of Lebanon in 1982 and its 2-decade-long occupation of South Lebanon. But Anyway, you can hear in this debate that Kamala Harris is echoing this neoconservative rhetoric about Israel and Iran.
But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel.
And then Donald Trump responds claiming that Kamala Harris supposedly hates Israel, and he says, I'm the real pro-Israel candidate. And of course, there's no distinction between them on this issue. In fact, as part of his rhetoric, Trump pointed to the fact that Kamala Harris did not attend the address that Netanyahu gave in the US Congress. But even though Harris skipped Netanyahu's speech, she held a private meeting with him in Washington. So this demonstrates the cynical PR of the Democrats. Harris wanted her supporters, who are obviously frustrated by the fact that the Biden-Harris administration is supporting a far-right Israeli regime as it carries out genocide. So she tells her supporters, hey, I'm not going to attend Netanyahu's speech. But then she privately meets with Netanyahu and reassures complete U.S. support for Israel as it commits genocide. So it shows that there is no real difference between the Republicans and Democrats on this issue of support for Israeli colonialism and genocide. The only so-called differences are cosmetic. They're public relations. They're marketing. Keep that in mind while you listen to Trump here.
She hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality.
What's so funny about Donald Trump's rhetoric on Israel is he claims that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden supposedly are anti-Israel, when in reality, the Biden-Harris administration has given more than $18 billion to Israel as it's carried out genocide in Gaza, invaded Lebanon, and attacked Syria, Yemen, and Iran, strongly supporting these colonial wars of aggression. And yet Trump claims they're supposedly anti-Israel. And in a speech that Trump gave at the Israeli-American Council, he had some of the most extreme pro-Israel rhetoric that you can imagine. I mean, it was incredible. And in this speech, Trump claimed that if Kamala Harris wins the election, Israel will cease to exist.
If these are our positions Kamala Harris takes before the election, just wait to see what she would do after the election. You won't have a country left. Israel will not exist within 2 years if she becomes president. And what a difference a president makes. Big difference. Just 4 years ago, when I left office, the United States and Israel were safer, closer, and stronger than they have ever been before, by far.
Then Trump claimed that Kamala Harris is the candidate of the forces who want to destroy Western civilization, whereas he will defend Western civilization.
Kamala Harris is the candidate of the forces that want to destroy Western civilization. And I'm the candidate of those who want to defend Western civilization, defend Israel.
In this same speech, Donald Trump threatened to deport people from the U.S. if they oppose the U.S. and Israel and its genocidal crimes, to deport them, to expel them from the country.
And we will deport the foreign jihad sympathizers and Hamas supporters from our midst. We will get them out. If you hate America, if you want to eliminate Israel, we will throw you out of our country so rapidly your head will spin.
And then, showing how extreme he is, Donald Trump boasted that he withdrew the United States from the UN Human Rights Council over its criticisms of Israel's crimes, and he also attacked the International Criminal Court, calling them radicals, the ICC at The Hague. This is how insane Donald Trump and the far-right Republicans are.
I withdrew from the anti-Semitic UN Human Rights Council, which was a big thing. I sanctioned the anti-American and anti-Israel radicals of the International Criminal Court. Many of you know what that meant. That was a big deal.
In this speech at the Israeli-American Council, Donald Trump boasted that he was, quote, the best friend Israel ever had, end quote. He bragged that he recognized Israel's illegal occupation of the Golan Heights, which, according to international law, is Syrian sovereign territory. And then Israel awarded him by creating an illegal settlement that's named after him called Trump Heights. He also boasted of pressuring some of the Persian Gulf monarchies especially the UAE and Bahrain, to normalize relations with Israel in the so-called Abraham Accords. And he boasted of opening the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem in violation of international law. According to international law, East Jerusalem must be the capital of a future Palestinian state, and Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, is illegally occupied by Israel. Trump ignored that, and he instead moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. And then he also boasted of destroying the Iran nuclear deal, and he boasted of giving billions of dollars of weapons and support to Israel.
I gave them Golan Heights. I gave them the Abraham Accords. I recognized the capital of Israel and opened the embassy in Jerusalem. And most importantly of all, I terminated the Iran nuclear deal, which was the worst deal ever made in the history of Israel, in the history of the Middle East. I was there 4 years, gave them billions and billions of dollars. I was the best friend Israel ever had.
So from these clips, you can see very clearly that in the presidential election, when it comes to Israel, there is no difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. They both strongly support Israel as it's carrying out genocide in Gaza, bombing Gaza and the West Bank, invading Lebanon, bombing civilian areas, densely populated cities in Lebanon, as it's bombing Syria, as it's bombing Yemen, as it's constantly attacking Iran and assassinating Iranian officials. Both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump support these policies, and they have sent billions of dollars when Trump was president, and as vice president now, Kamala Harris, their administrations sent billions of dollars of weapons and military support to Israel to facilitate these crimes against humanity. And their running mates, the vice presidential candidates J.D. Vance and Tim Walz, also strongly support Israel, as they made very clear in the vice presidential debate. Now, what was incredible about this debate is the first question asked by CBS News was about Iran's counterstrike on Israel. They erased all of the historical context. CBS did not mention that Israel has repeatedly attacked Iran and that Iran was acting in self-defense. Instead, they portrayed Iran as an evil, aggressive boogeyman. And what was incredible about this question is they asked if the candidates would support a preemptive Israeli strike on Iran. That's the way they framed it, even though, again, Israel has already attacked Iran multiple times. And both Tim Walz and J.D. Vance made it clear that, yes, they support Israel in all of its attacks and will continue to support Israel as it wages war on Iran and other countries in the region. This was Tim Walz's response.
Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran?
Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. We will stay committed. And as the vice president said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
By the way, there was a hilarious moment in that clip there. I don't know if you noticed. Tim Walz accidentally said the expansion of Israel and its proxies. Of course, he meant to say Iran. I've already talked about how it's not true that these resistance forces in the region are so-called Iranian proxies. That's very misleading propaganda. But what's so funny about this clip is it's a kind of Freudian slip. I'm going to play it again.
The expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there.
Now, the Republican candidate, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's running mate, basically had the same response when he was asked if he would support an Israeli so-called preemptive strike on Iran. And he said that he would support Israel no matter what it does. That Israel is a close U.S. ally, even if it has to commit genocide, which is what it's doing, he will always support it.
Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
In this debate, J.D. Vance also said something very misleading, and this is a common Republican talking point that Donald Trump has also constantly repeated. He said that the Biden-Harris administration has given more than $100 billion in unfrozen assets to Iran. And you'll constantly hear Republicans say, the Democrats gave $100 billion to Iran. This is so misleading. What they're talking about is Iranian assets that were illegally frozen by the United States. Actually, going back to the Barack Obama administration, the Democrats, they illegally froze Iran's foreign assets and then used those sanctions that the Obama administration imposed illegally in violation of international law on Iran in order to force Tehran to the negotiating table for the Iran nuclear deal. Those were sanctions that violated international law because they did not have the support of the UN Security Council. They were unilateral coercive measures, according to international law, which are illegal. So as part of the Iran nuclear deal, Obama agreed to lift those illegal sanctions and provide sanctions relief. And then the U.S. allowed an estimated, we don't know the exact number, but an estimate of over $100 billion of Iranian assets to go back to Iran. The U.S. was not giving Iran money. It was unfreezing the assets that it stole from Iran. Just like how the U.S. and European countries have frozen, that is stolen, $300 billion of assets belonging to Russia. And the U.S. and European countries stole assets belonging to Venezuela and Afghanistan. So it's not like they're giving money to these countries. In this case, they unfroze what they had stolen from Iran. But then the Republicans claim that this is an example of the Democrats supposedly helping Iran. Here's this clip of Donald Trump saying that.
Then Kamala and Joe Biden delivered over $100 billion in sanctions relief, all stuff that I held back. And I would have been very good. They would have been very happy. I wanted one thing from Iran: no nuclear weapon.
And here's this clip of J.D. Vance claiming the same thing in the vice presidential debate.
Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration.
But again, this anti-Iran obsession in Washington is bipartisan. It's not just the Republicans. We saw this in the debate. The Democrat, Tim Walz, also demonized Iran. And he mentioned in the Trump administration, when Iran launched attacks on U.S. troops that are illegally occupying Iraq, after Iraq's democratically elected parliament voted to expel the U.S. military occupiers and Trump refused to withdraw them. And today, the Biden-Harris administration has also refused to withdraw the U.S. troops illegally occupying Iraq. But the point is that what Tim Walz did not mention, the historical context, is that Iran launched those attacks on U.S. soldiers in Iraq after Trump murdered Iran's top general, Qasem Soleimani, in an act of war in January 2020. And Trump also murdered the top Iraqi military official, Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis. Al-Muhandis and Soleimani, these top Iraqi and Iranian officials, played a key role in defeating ISIS. And then what happened? Trump killed them with the support of Israel, as always. And then Iran, as an act of self-defense, after the Trump administration carried out an act of war against it, it retaliated. But again, all of that historical context is conveniently left out by the people in this debate, whether it's the candidates or whether it's the so-called journalists at CBS News, erasing all of this context. Here's this clip of Tim Walz demonizing Iran, and he does correctly point out that Trump tore up the Iran nuclear deal, which is an important historical fact, but he doesn't mention that Trump murdered top Iraqi and Iranian officials.
We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches.
Speaking of historical context being left out, in this vice presidential debate, J.D. Vance also said that we need to talk about the order of events. And he claimed that this all started on October 7th when Hamas attacked Israel.
Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris.
However, this does not start in October 2023. This starts in 1948, when Israel was founded through the mass ethnic cleansing and the violent expulsion of the majority of indigenous Palestinians in an act of genocide that has continued since, in which Israel has tried to colonize and steal all of the land of the indigenous Palestinians, just like the United States did to indigenous nations, and Canada did, and Australia did, carrying out genocide and ethnic
salty
cleansing.
Commie. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, it's kind of odd for Ben to say it started in 1948 as opposed to what was it, 90, I can't remember the year that the British mandate was, but it was like the late 19th century, right? You know, so I'm like, it's surprising coming from then.
Indigenous nations. Of course, none of that is mentioned, yet alone the illegal Israeli occupation of Palestinian territory and Syrian territory since 1967, when Israel invaded and militarily occupied these territories. And ever since then, millions of Palestinians in the West Bank.
Am I thinking of the Balfour Declaration? Because there was like the start of like the you know a Zionist state in Palestine, you know, was first like tossed around, I think, in like the late 1800s, but I could be wrong. Balfour Declaration was 1917. So what am I thinking of? Zionist Congress, maybe? I don't know. Apparently I need to brush up on my history. Yeah, 1897, 1898, if I recall. Hey, Andy, welcome in.
Have been living under illegal Israeli military rule in brutal apartheid conditions. The people of Gaza, meanwhile,
there was definitely like there was talk about it in the 1800s for sure.
First occupied by Israel, and then Israel, after withdrawing its colonial settlers, Israel blockaded Gaza with a medieval siege that even the conservative former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, David Cameron, referred to as an open-air prison in Gaza. And this isn't to mention Israel's illegal occupation of the Syrian Golan Heights, which is Syrian territory, and Israel's constant wars of aggression against its neighbors, its invasion of Lebanon, its attacks on Syria and Iraq, its attacks on Iran, its attacks on Yemen, the list goes on. That's the historical context of colonialism and US-backed wars of aggression and genocide and ethnic cleansing and racism. That's the historical context that is not mentioned. Instead, we act as though everything began on October 7th. And this is, of course, what J.D. Vance and Tim Walz and the so-called journalists at CBS News claimed in this debate. They don't want to mention any of that historical context because it makes it very clear that according to international law, Israel is the aggressor carrying out colonialism and genocide. But the final remarks that I'm going to conclude this analysis with today is the comments made by J.D. Vance, because I think they are very revealing. In this vice presidential debate, he claimed that under the Biden-Harris administration, the problem is that the rest of the world no longer fears the United States. And he said that what Trump and Vance want to do is to make people fear the United States and be afraid of stepping out of line as the bully, the oppressor of the world. Here is this very revealing clip.
We have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world.
I think that's the perfect note to end on. It really summarizes how these warmongers in Washington see the United States as a global empire that needs to make the entire world afraid of its invasions and occupations and sanctions and other forms of unconventional war. And the Republicans, like Trump and Vance, are more blatant about it. They openly say, yeah, we're bullies. We're going to kick you around. The Democrats use a rhetoric of human rights and democracy, but in reality, they're also these imperialists who are constantly waging wars around the world, invading countries. Let's not forget that it was Joe Biden and his Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, Democrats, who strongly supported the illegal invasion of Iraq carried out by the Republican George Bush. It was completely bipartisan. Trump also supported the invasion of Iraq, although he later lied about it. This is completely bipartisan. And their tone is a little different. The Democrats say we should be a little less blatant. We should be the smiley face of empire, whereas the Republicans say we should be the frowny face of empire. But both parties
I
are
love this
full of
analysis.
brutal, murderous imperialists who want the U.S. empire.
That's it. That's it. Democrats want to be the smiley face of empire. Republicans want to be the frowny face of empire. Like, but when it comes down to it, they're both murderous imperialists. Let's fucking go. Ben's spitting it out.
To try to maintain its control over the entire world. And Israel is a very significant outpost for the U.S. empire. It is, as the former U.S. Secretary of State Alexander Haig said, an unsinkable aircraft carrier that the U.S. empire uses to try to maintain its control over this region. This is why the U.S. and Israel are at war with half of the countries in the Middle East, or in West Asia is a better term. That's why they're attacking Iraq and Iran and Syria and Yemen. And that's why Israel is invading Lebanon and carrying out genocide in Gaza. It is part of an attempt to maintain U.S. imperial control over one of the most strategic regions on Earth, which of course has very plentiful and lucrative natural resources and is located in a geostrategic location connecting Asia to Europe. These are the kinds of things that we discuss here regularly at Geopolitical Economy Report. But this analysis has already been long enough today, so I'm going to conclude on that note. I'm Ben Norton. Now, the Republican candidate.
Today is the 14th of October, 2024. Last night, while we were sleeping in our beds comfortably, Israel committed yet another massacre in Gaza. Separate to the siege ongoing in Gaza City and in the north, they bombed shelters in Deir al-Balah. We woke up to videos of people burning alive, helpless, screaming. And this happens on a daily basis. At no point have we seen during this genocide a period in which Palestinians in Gaza get a break. The reason I want to talk about today's massacre specifically is that this comes after the news that the United States of America is sending THAAD missiles to support the Israeli efforts in expanding the war to Lebanon. What is abundantly clear after an entire year of genocide is that this is not simply Israel's genocide. This is America's genocide as well. They're not simply people in the background helping with some money here, with some bombs there. They are directly complicit in this genocide. They are causing this genocide. If the Americans wanted to, they would stop the genocide in an instant. But the truth is that they want it to continue. And Biden and the Democrats are willing to risk losing the next election because it is more important for the Israeli colonial state, the Israeli apartheid genocidal regime to continue existing than it is for them to win the next election. The reasons the Americans have bathed themselves in Palestinian blood is not simply because they want to support an ally, it's because they want to keep their boots on Palestinian necks. See, this takes us to the entire reason for Israel's existence. Israel is not simply a normal nation state. Israel, from day one, has been a colonial entity, a military outpost designed so that the highest bidder can use this state to maintain control over the region. The early Zionists knew it, the British knew it, and the Americans know it today. Biden said in 1986 that if there were no Israel, the Americans would have to create an Israel in order to maintain their interests in the region. And that's what their support is about. It's about maintaining their interests in the region, no matter how many Palestinians die. When we look at why the Americans are supporting this genocide, we can't simply blame the so-called Zionist lobby. Now, it's true that the Zionist lobby is one of the most important, one of the most powerful lobbies in the United States. But to simply pawn it off to foreign interests as if though the American administration has no power is not only illogical, but also wrong. The Zionist lobby does have power. It's true that the Zionist lobby does pump in millions upon millions of dollars to win elections, to influence policy. But the fact is that the American administration is Zionist, and not because they want a peaceful and secure home for the Jewish people, but because they want to maintain their own interests in Palestine and beyond.
I'm saying it.
The truth is that on October the 7th, when the Palestinian resistance fighters broke free of
You
the
like
cage
dog shit
that the
content.
Zionists had
Please
put them in,
subscribe.
they not only attacked Israel, they not only attacked the colonial Zionist entity, they attacked American hegemony. This is why at every single point, at every single turn, the Americans have supported this genocide. They've provided cover for this genocide. They've provided money and bombs that go to kill children in Gaza. It's not simply a war between two factions fighting over a strip of land. This is a war for the fate of the region and humanity at large. This is what a lot of people don't understand. They don't understand that Palestine is at the center. Israel is a symbol of American power over the entire world. Israel is its most successful and most powerful pet project. When Palestinians protest Israel, they're not only protesting in order to liberate themselves from the chains of Zionist and American hegemony. They're protesting and they're struggling to liberate themselves and the entire world from a system that is designed to exploit the majority of the globe, a system that is designed to exploit resources and destroy the planets. It's about creating a new future, not only for the region, but for the entire world. This is not a war against a genocidal colonial entity alone. This is a war against a genocidal global hegemon, which is called the United States of America. This is America's genocide. So a question raises itself. What do we do in the face of the greatest superpower the world has ever seen? What do we do in the face of insurmountable odds? The answer is simple. We do what we can. That's it. That's all anyone can ask of you. If all you can do is post a few things on social media, you do that. All you can do is go to a march. That's what you do. But you do what you can. If you can do more and you decide not to, when you're perfectly capable, you are complicit. There is no excuse.
I do what I can.
Not to do what you can in the
This
face
is what I'm doing.
of this genocide, of the greatest crime that this generation has seen. This struggle is for the destiny of humanity. Ask yourselves this. In the face of this horror,
I don't know that it's enough.
of the greatest crime that we've seen in our lifetimes, is it normal for so-called democratically elected politicians
They do it every day.
to go
They do it
against
every fucking
our
day.
will and continue to fund the genocide?
Till Palestine is free.
Is it normal that when we, as the people in these so-called democratic nations, go out and protest, when we make our voices heard, when the vast majority of us want the genocide to end, our governments still continue to support it? Is that normal? The answer is, it's not normal. But one of the reasons that they continue to block their ears, literally, as we call for the end of this crime, is because they want us to feel like we are powerless. They want us to feel like no matter what we do, they're in control and they will succeed and we will fail. But the truth is so far from that. The truth is that we can't even conceive how great our power is. The truth is, if those who are complicit in these crimes are not scared of the people, they would not suppress our voices. If we had no power, they've got no reason to fear us. If we had no power, police wouldn't shut us down. If we had no power, these governments would not move to criminalize our dissent. But the truth is that when we move, mountains move. So we need to do what we can. I'm not asking you to go out and move a mountain by yourself. I'm asking you to do what you can to get that mountain moved. We number in the billions. If everybody does their part, the entire world will see a change we could not conceive of. If everyone does their part, we will see a future in which this kind of crime would not be possible. We would see a future in which politicians are accountable to the people. The plight of the Palestinians is the plight of humanity. We must see it as such. So no matter how bad the odds may seem, continue to struggle. Continue to make your voices heard, because you're not only fighting for the Palestinians, you're fighting for humanity.
I mean, no notes, 10 out of 10. Yeah, solidarity is supposed to be hard. You know, it's called the struggle for a reason, you know? So, I know that we're all going through it, and I know that it's taking a toll on everyone, but we can't give up. We have to keep fighting. We have to stick together. Fuck yeah. Yeah, I will take a look at that for maybe another stream, but I think we're gonna do this piece that came out earlier today, just a little bit ago. Gabor Mate, like the goat. If it's hard for us, it's harder for the in Palestine and in West Bank. Yeah, I mean, we're in such a privileged position, you know, to be observers, you know, to not be living under bombardment, to not be living under horrible modern warfare. You know, we are incredibly privileged that this toll is only mental. It is hard to watch and feel helpless, and that's why it's important to have community, you know, to come to places like this, to find others who are in solidarity with the Palestinian movement and realize that we're not alone in the struggle, because we are, you know, it's a long trajectory, but in the end we win. How many Mate boys are there? At least 3? We live in a police state? Yeah, we live in a police state that's like, we live in a very like well-controlled, managed, civilized society, but we're not living under bombs. Like, we're not living under fear of bombs every day, waking up to dead friends and hearing blasts in the night, you know, like they are in Lebanon. So it's a huge place of privilege. I swear to God, every time I talk, people leave. I should just be quiet.
Hi, Gabor.
Hello, Frank.
It's really a pleasure and an honor for me to have you on today. Unfortunately, it's for all the wrong reasons, but the last year has been, for I think many of us, so traumatic, often paralyzing, that I thought talking to you, who's an expert on these questions, trauma and addiction, and was very important. I'm not gonna ask you to find solutions for all of us, but I mean, in a way, I've been trying through these videos. It's been for me a way to to try to deal with what's happening and what's been happening in Gaza, in Palestine, and now in Lebanon for the last year, talking to friends and others. Millions of people woke up this morning to images on their phones, on their TVs, probably not on their TVs actually, but on their phones anyway, of people burned alive in northern Gaza.
Yeah.
This, as if the trauma we've been experiencing for a year wasn't enough, and many of us maybe naively thought that the level of horror had reached a point where we already cannot find words to describe, but this morning went a notch above what we thought was possible. These kind of images can have a very paralyzing effect on people. But you have spoken specifically on guilt and the way guilt is, in a way, necessary to feel our interconnectedness with others. But how can we turn, I mean, people who live like me in Europe, my friends in the US, who are living in countries where governments have been actively complicit in this genocide, can often feel really paralyzed. So how can we turn this guilt into something, in a way, positive that will benefit the people suffering in Gaza, Palestine, and Lebanon?
Well, first of all, this morning's images, it's like we're watching Auschwitz on TikTok, you know. Had there been YouTube and Instagram and TikTok around Auschwitz, this is what we would have seen. People burning alive. And it's beyond horrendous. It's beyond comprehension. And as to your statement about you thought that it would end at some point, actually it's the other way around. When people like this are empowered and encouraged and allowed and supported and perpetrating their horrors, they get more crazy, they get more cruel, they get more remorseless, more relentless, more ruthless. That's what happened to the Nazis. The Nazis did not start off with gas chambers, you know, but then they started killing their mentally ill people in gas vans. Then they started shooting Jews in Eastern Europe. And then they ended up with the gas chambers of Auschwitz. So it's a progression of madness and cruelty that's almost inevitable on the part of the perpetrator. And especially when it's encouraged by all the imperial powers. Now you ask about guilt in Brussels. Well, there's not been enough guilt in Brussels. The Belgians killed 12 million Congolese in the late 19th, early 20th centuries. That subject is barely talked about in Brussels even today. I don't know how much education of that Holocaust is conducted in Belgian schools. Maybe you can tell me. But how much time is spent educating Belgian kids about what their country did? You tell me, what's the answer?
I've got a 13-year-old kid. He doesn't know a word about what's happened in Congo so far.
Yeah. 12, I think it was 12.
I mean, not through school anyway.
Yeah. So that if people don't look at their own history, why would they look at horrors elsewhere? So that in the West, there's been this denial. You know, if you walk through Trafalgar Square or Westminster Abbey in London, you see all these monuments to these mass murderers who killed thousands and tens of thousands of people in India, in Africa, and elsewhere in Asia. You know, so the present horrors fit into a long history of Western colonialism and Western mass murder of indigenous peoples. So what do you do with the guilt? Well, there's a guilt with, guilt. Guilt is when you do something deliberately that you could have avoided doing. I don't feel guilt about what Israel is doing. I'm not doing it. I'm against it. I've been against it for decades. When I used to believe in it, before 1967, I didn't know any better. It's just what I believed. You know, as a Jewish survivor of the Holocaust, why would I not believe in a Jewish state? You know? So I don't feel guilty about that. And since I've been opposing it for decades now, why would I feel guilty about that? So it's not a question of guilt. It's a question of rage. It's a question of outrage. And the problem is that the outrage is helpless because your government and my government here in Canada and all the Western governments, all the post-colonial legacy governments are supporting this current ethnic cleansing and colonial perpetration. So the proper response is not guilt. Proper response is how can we channel our rage and healthy rage. And I'm afraid that's where we run into trouble because apart from providing support, whatever material support we can give to the Palestinians, apart from providing moral support, apart from speaking the truth, we also have to accept that we're helpless in the sense that all the conversations that you've had with the wonderful people that you've had on your program, Ilan Papi and others, all the talks that I've been giving, they've not saved a single life of a single Palestinian infant. And in the short term, they're not going to. And so the question is, do we stay silent or can we continue to talk, make a contribution, hopefully, to wake people up in the long term? And I think one thing we can say is that more and more people are waking up and more people are seeing reality and more people are recognizing the horror of the Zionist project that it has perpetrated on the Palestinian people and perpetrates on the world, actually. And how that Zionist project is bound up with the international colonial system, imperial system. So our job, can we stay awake? Can we hold on to ourselves? Can we hold on to our faith in humanity? Can we make a contribution that in the long term may make a difference? That's my response. And you know what? In the meanwhile, our hearts are breaking every day. Our hearts are breaking every day, and there's nothing we can do about that.
In your opinion, is what we are experiencing this genocide? And sometimes I think the word genocide is actually too soft. We should find another word, because
what I said earlier today. There's
the intent, there is the action, but there's this like kind of added sadism. I feel people in northern Gaza cannot even flee, and they are being burned alive. And but do you think, in a way, that the Zionism project and Zionism always had this possibility, in itself?
Well, it didn't start off to be sadist. It didn't start off like that. It started off with this genuine desire to create a Jewish state for the persecuted Jews of Eastern Europe. The problem was, the essential contradiction was that, as we all know, there was a people already living there. And there's no way that the Zionist project could have been realized. And they knew this right from the beginning, without support of the imperial powers. So Theodor Herzl, the founder of Hungarian Jew like me, the founder of modern political Zionism, he tried to make deals with all the imperial powers. He went to the Turks, he went to the Russians, he went to there was this highly anti-Semitic Russian leader, Count Plehve, who supported the pogroms. But Herzl went to deal with him, trying to get imperial support for this Jewish project in Palestine. Of course, he ended up on the right side of history. Not he, because he was no longer alive, but the movement, in that the British Empire took up the cause of Zionism because, as Winston Churchill said, the establishment of a Jewish entity in Palestine accords with the best interests of the British Empire. So there's no other way that the Zionist project could have succeeded to establish itself in Palestine with the support of foreign imperialism. And that's what it's done ever since. So that means you have to tread on the rights and the hopes and the national existence of the indigenous people. And so it's not that they set out to be cruel, it's that they had to become cruel in order to achieve their goals. And that's not retrospective. Some of them saw that right from the beginning. There was a Jewish leader, Usher Ginsburg, his Hebrew name was Ahad Aham. He said in 1896 that if we continue to treat the Arabs like this, all we're going to end up is one small Levantine people tormenting another small Levantine people. And he said, if this is the Messiah coming, I don't want to see him arrive. So it's not that this is retrospective. There were Jews all along who saw that in order to create the Jewish state, they had to oppress and suppress the Palestinians. Most of the Zionist leaders said, yeah, we have to do that, but we're going to do it because our interests are more dire and more important. So that it's not that they set out to be cruel, it's that they had to become cruel. They had to harden their hearts in order to establish their project. And they did. And very quickly, they became very cynical, very hypocritical, very cruel towards the Palestinians, suppressing them, using the British alliance to defeat Palestinian opposition to the takeover of their homeland. The British Empire sent 150,000 troops to Palestine in 1936 to suppress the Arab revolt. The Jews enthusiastically took part in that suppression. And then the Jewish terrorist organizations began killing Palestinian civilians and others. And then since then, the commitment to ethnic cleansing and to the enlargement of the Jewish state has necessitated increasing cruelty. So some of the early Zionists and some of the older Zionists, even now, can't believe what they're seeing. How the state has become this fascistic, suppressive, cruel, sadistic entity. But it's an internal logic that once I decide to start suppressing somebody, I'm going to have to keep getting harder and tougher and more cruel in the process. So it was an internal logic. They didn't set out that way, but inevitably they had to become that way. And when they made the commitment after 1967 to hold on to the occupied territories, that just magnified. And
you said, sorry.
One final comment on the statism. All you have to do is to watch the TikTok videos of Israeli soldiers dancing and laughing and chortling and dressing themselves in the clothes of Palestinians and mocking the Palestinians and making humor out of blowing up homes. I mean, it's sadism of the worst sort. And they don't even hide it. They put it on TikTok. The Western press doesn't reproduce these images, but anybody can watch them. They become sadists.
Actually, I didn't want to ask you this question, but now that you've mentioned the TikTok videos of Israeli soldiers dancing and, while blowing up houses in Gaza,
yeah,
I'm very interested in trying to understand how can a person, and I don't think we are born with a bad gene or a good gene, how a person can reach this level of sadism. We know that Israeli kids, Israeli Jews, are brainwashed from a very, very early age through school books and through education to believe that everyone wants them dead and that they are surrounded by monsters. But do they truly believe it? Don't they?
Well, if you listen to people like Nurit Peled, who's the daughter of Miha Peled, who's a IDF general, or her brother Miko Peled, if you listen to Ilan Pape, who grew up in Israel and was in the IDF, if you listen to Shlomo Sand, all these other Israelis, they'll tell you about the propaganda and the brainwashing that happens almost right from birth. So that the sense of superiority and entitlement and fear and loathing of the Arabs is just brainwashed into them right from the beginning. It's like a cult. And
it works.
And it works really beautifully. And then, of course, Palestinian resistance doesn't always take beautiful forms. I mean, the Palestinians have done some terrible things. You know, the suicide bombings, the killing of civilians. Now, why people are driven to that despair, that's another question. But from the Israeli point of view, this just validates and justifies what they've always been taught. You know? And October the 7th, the killings of civilians, the abduction of people and all that, to the Israelis, this just justifies everything they've ever been told about the Palestinians. And what they did to create the Palestinians, they didn't consider that for a second. But I also think it's traumatizing to grow up in an environment like that. It's traumatizing to grow up in an environment where you're always told that you're always under threat. And that fear and loathing of the other is like the essential value. It's traumatizing to grow up like that. What does that do to you as a person? You know, not to mention, there's a lot of historical trauma in the parents and the parents of the parents of Israelis that they brought from Europe. And those traumatic imprints are passed on as well, quite apart from the Palestinian-Israeli struggle. There's just trauma that's passed on from generations. So you get this historical brainwashing and this immersion into a cult-like sense of superiority and loathing of the other, coupled with historical trauma passed on from generations, and you get people capable of doing what they're doing now. And then you get the valorization. You know what I mean? Most of the Israeli press, as you know, if you read Haaretz or listen to Gideon Levy or any of these honest Israelis, the Israeli press just valorizes the Israeli army, the most moral army in the world. Here they're perpetrating mass murder and war crimes, and they still think they're the most moral army in the world. And the heroism. What heroism? Dropping bombs on civilians from the air who have no defenses, who have no anti-tank weapons, who have no capacity to fight back in any meaningful sense. And this is valorized as heroism. I mean, it's just, you know what, Frank? One runs out of words. That's what happens.
Yeah.
At a certain point, words just become inadequate in the face of what we're watching. And I think that's part of the problem a lot of us have. We don't even know how to even talk about it anymore.
Yeah, and that's what I, in a way, wanted to ask you, because, like, what does it do to your mind when you have no words to describe what you are seeing? That's something I'm experiencing myself, like I'm sure millions of others, where I cannot find words, and I have this feeling of utter uselessness. What can it create, in a way, in the mind, this feeling of there's no words to describe what we are seeing?
Well, first of all, I would argue with you that uselessness is not a feeling. It's feelings are I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm sad, I'm angry. Uselessness is a self-judgment. It's a point of view. And it's not a very compassionate one either, because nobody is useless. And but as to your core question about how to handle these emotions for which the words are inadequate, you just allow yourself to feel them. Be with them. Just really be with them. Be with them. And know that you're not alone. I mean, I just had a tour in Europe, a 6-country, 3-week tour in Europe. I didn't make it to Belgium, but I was in Holland, Denmark, and England, Eastern Europe. And I can tell you, I met people everywhere who have the same feeling. Not the majority, perhaps. The majority have a way of distancing themselves from reality, and they care more about which football team wins the next game than what's happening in some other part of the world. But everywhere I met, there were people whose hearts were broken. And it's good to be in touch with other people whose hearts are broken. Let our hearts be broken together. But beyond that, let's just feel what we feel. Don't try and push it down.
How have you dealt with it? I remember I watched an interview you gave about 4 months ago, I think to TRT, where you said that this time had been the heaviest and darkest time of your life for sure. This was 4 months ago.
Still like
how do you relate? Yeah.
Yeah, it's still like that. I mean, apart from my experience as an infant in the Second World War, when Budapest was being bombed by the Allies and occupied by the Germans, and there's all this horror was taking place to my family and to others, which I don't recall consciously. The emotional memories are stamped in my nervous system. But in my conscious memory, look, I lived through the Vietnam War, and the Americans, as you know, killed 2 to 3 million Vietnamese in the most horrible ways, napalm and bombed them and mass murder and so on. But at least the Vietnamese had the capacity to fight back. They had the weapons from China and Russia. They had anti-aircraft guns. They could shoot down airplanes. They had the army and the guerrilla experience that they gained fighting against the French. And they were an effective resistance force that ultimately was able to defeat the Americans. So horrible as that was, it wasn't as one-sided as this is. It's the utter one-sidedness of what we're watching. And furthermore, the development of technology where it's not just a few minutes on the nightly news. You can watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on Instagram, TikTok. And so just the palpable presence of this horror on our screens. All I have to do is pick this up and I can see people being burning alive this morning. So, first of all, the availability of it, and secondly, the utter one-sidedness of it. The utter one-sidedness of it. And then the complete hypocrisy and dishonesty of the Western media. So that you think you're going crazy, like this. You see in front of your eyes, you see what's happening. Your heart tells you how wrong this is. And there's all these people telling you that this is justified. So the disconnect is just immense. So how do people even hold on to their moral sense? How do they hold on to themselves? How do they hold on to their awareness of what is right and wrong and their commitment to the truth? It's a real challenge.
And remember,
what about
hydrate
the fact that
or
Israel
die.
says it's doing it in your name, in the name of the Jewish people, or in the name of Jews, or for the Jews?
Yeah, well, I can only laugh. First of all, if they're naming it in the name of the Jews, if they're doing it in the name of the Jews, that automatically makes the whole world anti-Semitic, because a lot of the world hates what's happening. Maybe not the leaders, but billions of people in the world are totally appalled. Do you really want people to be against the Jews? Then keep claiming that you're doing this in the name of the Jews. So, I mean, it's just absurd, you know. Secondly, it's never been true. It's never been true. Zionism was never the 100% consensus ideology amongst Jews. People right from the beginning opposed Zionism for all kinds of reasons. Some for religious reasons, some for political reasons, some because they saw what it would do to the